He saw the Washington Post talking about a disabled boat as opposed to a destroyed boat, and understood, as a guy who served for 22 years, wait, that makes a difference. If the mission is to destroy a boat, and after strike one, it's only been disabled, you can pretty much bet your dollars to donuts there's going to be a strike two. That's a mission not accomplished. And so the second strike would have been perfectly within the laws of war, with or without two survivors clinging to some portion of the boat. But on top of all that, we get the New York Times now reporting that at least one of the officials they spoke to reports that one of these alleged survivors, or whatever you want to call them, had radioed back. It was actually radioing back to another narco-terrorist saying, like, help, the boat has been disabled, and giving, the people in command, like Admiral Bradley, even more reason to take the second strike. And we also now learn, contrary to the Washington Post report, that Pete Hegseth did not issue a second order. There was no verbal command to kill everybody, as WAPO reported. So, Rich, there was a litany of things wrong as it looks today from that Washington Post report, which is diametrically opposed to the New York Times and to what the White House and the Pentagon are saying.
Yeah, so just as someone who's spent a lot of time consuming news my adult life, just the Washington Post story has the classic aspect of something that's too perfect, that's too cinematic. It feels like the movie where you have the handsome, slightly nefarious defense secretary with all the screens on the wall, and there's the moment where you can see whether you can take out the wounded guys, and he orders it. So I just inherently, we need to learn more, but the New York Times story seems more credible to me. Where I depart from our guest, I guess, is that what he says makes total sense to me. If this is a destroyer or some sort of military vessel, of course you take it out, even if there are wounded people on the vessel. But I just don't think these drug runners are combatants. I don't think they represent a threat to our military. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't take the guys off the boat and then sink the boat or whatever you want to do. So I have a problem over and beyond the double tap. I don't think we should be tapping these boats to begin with because they're not combatants.
Okay, but they've gotten a legal blessing for doing that. And so now the question is tactics and whether they're within the rules of war. And it looks like the Washington Post got way ahead of its skis on this one, Charles. And I'll tell you something else that's interesting here. This morning you had NPR, and I believe, I don't know what NPR tapes, excuse me, it's Up First podcast. But I think it's either very, very late at night or first thing in the morning, because I'm always comparing my own AM update to theirs just to see if they have what we have, because we always go very, very late on our taping. Anyway, they completely ignore the New York Times reporting, which is not like NPR. So I think they either missed it, or worse, they just didn't account for it in doubling down on the what appears to be faulty Washington Post reporting from Friday. Take a listen to what I heard on NPR this morning.
So on Friday, the Washington Post reported that on September 2nd, U.S. forces struck one of those boats, leaving survivors afterwards. And so Hegseth gave an order to kill those survivors. Now, NPR later confirmed that Hegseth had ordered both strikes. All of that matters because, as Congress members from both parties have said, that second strike may have constituted a war crime. Meanwhile, the Department of Defense in that Washington Post story said that, quote, this entire narrative is completely false.
Now, what did we learn from the White House yesterday?
Well, the administration then confirmed some parts of this story. At yesterday's press briefing, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt acknowledged a second strike. But as for Hegseth ordering it, she didn't deny it, but said Hegseth authorized U.S. Navy Admiral Frank M. Bradley to take these actions. But our NPR colleague Tom Bowman has new reporting on this. Yesterday, a U.S. official who was not authorized to speak publicly pushed back on the White House, saying Hegseth gave the command for 2 strikes to kill, in addition to 2 strikes to sink the boat.
Okay, so it's like the New York Times report doesn't exist. She doesn't acknowledge Caroline Leavitt did say yesterday that Hegseth did not say kill everyone. She did not acknowledge, she just went with that he gave the order to kill, and that NPR confirmed that he gave this order to kill, like a second order. And she did not acknowledge the Hegseth tweet yesterday saying Admiral Bradley is the one who did it, and we stand behind him. He basically said, Admiral Bradley commanded the operation. He did nothing wrong. We stand behind him 100%. So, like, none of this is in NPR, which I will confess is shocking to me. Your thoughts?
Well, that part's not shocking to me. I was skeptical of the Washington Post story. That doesn't mean it's untrue, but I have been and remain skeptical of it, having lived through now 10 years of stories relating to Donald Trump. The way in which the anonymous sources were used as scaffolding to build what, as Rich said, looks a bit like a movie scene made me skeptical. And then when the New York Times story came out, which is against the interests of the New York Times' editorial bent, I became even more skeptical. So I'm absolutely open to the idea the Washington Post got this wrong or went too far with what information it had. And I think your guest made a compelling case to that effect. But I am with Rich on the underlying problem, which is that there's no authorization here for war in the first place. Now, that is a separate issue. It certainly would not mean that Pete Hegseth or others were engaged in war crimes or any of that. But I do think that that matters as a backdrop just as much as the details of this particular strike.
It does matter. I agree with you that it matters. Before I move off of this, and to that, I want to point this out. John Podhoretz, he's not a fan of Pete Hegseth, I think it's fair to say, of Commentary Magazine. He tweeted out, if this New York Times story is true, the Washington Post story is a genuinely vile slander of both Hegseth and Bradley. And he's seeing it too. So this is a major conflict between, the New York Times on the one hand, NPR and Washington Post on the other hand, and we'll see how it gets resolved. But resolve it should, because you've got military service personnel twisting in the wind. And the whole thing is so wrong. This is all started by Mark Kelly. He has this aw shucks, like, gee, I'm just being neighborly here, letting the soldiers know that they shouldn't obey these terrible orders, which inevitably, the evil Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth are giving. It's like, I'm just Joe Friendly trying to remind you of this. But like, that's what set this whole thing off. Here that is. This is actually from Meet the Press on Sunday, SOT 0.
You can certainly go to the judge, advocate generals, the lawyers, and have a discussion about it. If you don't have time, you just say simply, I'm not going to do that. That's against the law.
It puts a lot of burden on the troops to make a decision in real time.
It puts a tremendous amount of burden on officers in the military, but that is their responsibility, and they can figure out, a reasonable person can tell something that is legal and something that is illegal.
So would you refuse these specific orders to strike drug boats if you were still in uniform?
Well, the difference between the initial strike and what is being reported, as a second strike, and those things are different. I think this administration has tied themselves in knots, the explanations that we have received on how this is all legal. And I was saying weeks ago, my concern is with the service members, that we're going to put these individuals in a really, really tough decision, in a tough place. And they may find out, down the road that they did something that is illegal. It is not fair to them.
Wait, I thought he just said that He said in the middle of that soundbite, what's a legal order and what's an illegal order. Then he ends it with, I'm really concerned about the service members who might not know, and then down the line are going to get prosecuted. The whole argument is circular. It falls apart upon just, easy scrutiny, Rich Lowry. And that's because he's not doing protect the troops. He's doing politics.
Well, I thought it was notable in that interview. He was pressed a couple times on that point. Would you have defied the second order? And he was very hesitant. He never said, yeah, I would have defied it. Instead, went to those generalities. Look, on this video, it was clearly base maintenance. The audience for that is the left-wing base of the Democratic Party. Everyone who's in the military, all this stuff is drilled into them constantly. They don't need Mark Kelly's permission to defy illegal orders. And I'm highly skeptical on the other side of the ledger that any Marine, a 19-year-old Marine, is going to defy a lawful order because of something Mark Kelly said. So I find this aspect of it to be just entirely theater.
Here's the other thing, Rich, to your point about the Washington Post theatrical reporting. It was co-authored by Ellen Nakashima. Does that ring a bell? At WAPO. She's been square in the crosshairs of our friend Glenn Greenwald for many years, who has kept the receipts on the Russiagate fake reporting. And she was almost as bad as Natasha Berstrand, who's also all over this story. Two of the chief antagonists of Trump 1.0 are back in Trump 2.0. And now here's Ellen Nakashima, who won a Pulitzer in 2018 for her fake Russiagate reporting that said that Russia was trying to help Trump win the White House. Again, now we're looking at all these CIA documents and understanding that they were manipulated by John Brennan and so on. She had no skepticism at all because it made Trump look bad the first time around. And I would argue exactly the same thing is haunting her reporting. She's now been humiliated, not by Fox News, not by me, not by NR, but by the New York Times. And they need to update that reporting. Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious, too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips, too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
The FBI report she references confused me.
Me too.
Because this is what her headline is, opinion, damning report labels FBI rudderless ship under Kash Patel, with him and Dan Bongino more concerned with building personal resumes, which is a quote. And then she bases her report on, it's called a 115 report, quote, source reporting and analysis of the FBI under the leadership of FBI Director Kash Patel, a pulse check for the first 6 months. 4, U.S. Senate Committee on the Judiciary and Chairman Chuck Grassley, and U.S. House Committee on the Judiciary and Chairman Jim Jordan, by the National Alliance of Retired and Active Duty FBI Special Agents and Analysts. So I remain unclear on whether this was requested by the Senate Committee, whether this is just a bunch of like ex-FBI people who are disgruntled and predictably don't like Dan and Kash, or what this is. Sounds so official. I don't understand whether it is, but what we do know is it's very nasty. It really goes after Kash. They have a passing shot at Dan Bongino, trying to diminish him, but mostly it's focused on Kash Patel. And the thing that they're really zeroing in on is what they say is like a vanity, I guess, of his. A vanity. That they talk about how when he flew out to the Charlie Kirk staging, like the FBI staging in the wake of it, he was insistent on getting an FBI jacket brought to him on board the plane before he disembarked, and that he apparently did not have his own, quoting here, FBI raid jacket with him. He refused to step from the plane without wearing one. That FBI special agents at the Salt Lake City field office busy working on the Kirk case, quote, had to stop and ask around to find an FBI raid jacket, a medium-sized one that would fit. When a jacket belonging to a female agent was delivered to Patel on the plane, he complained that, quote, 2 areas on the upper sleeves did not have Velcro patches attached. And then he would not leave the plane, quote, until he had 2 patches to cover those areas, quote, so members of an FBI SWAT team took patches off of their uniforms and ran those patches over to Patel at the airport. The patches were then attached to the loaner FBI raid jacket, and Patel disembarked from the plane. The director was not happy with the way the investigation was going. He had an expletive-filled tirade, whatever. All that's kind of ridiculous. Of course, people yell in these tense times. But the jacket story, if true, it's not great.
No. Look, I had the same reaction you did, too. Like, I'm reading this story. I've read my share of stories about stuff like this. I don't remember this kind of quasi-official anonymous report that's handed over like that. I just don't remember anything quite like that. Not just with the FBI. I don't remember anything like that. They wrote like a serious, rigorous report with all these details, but it's not official, but it's kind of official. And then again, the question of Miranda. She's the only one, as far as I know, who's reported this so far. She's not anti-Trump. She doesn't write for an anti-Trump publication. And yet, with a few, to be sure, paragraphs of positive things, it's a very negative story. It's a very negative report. So you got to ask yourself, how did this thing get done? And how did it end up with Miranda? And how did Miranda decide to write it up? These are not the only stories like this about Kash Patel. There's other stories, but most of them have circulated in places like the Washington Post, the New York Times. So it's a bit of a mystery. But you're seeing the same things with Pete Hegseth and to some extent with Kristi Noem, which is again, it's not liberal media. It's people who love the president, who care about the president, who are using different outlets, in this case the New York Post, to put out there's problems. It's hard to escape the conclusion that the people are motivated by a desire to get the president to make a change in personnel, and he's not done that yet, and it's not clear if these will have an impact.
You know what though, it's always. Today we had a decision from the Third Circuit Court of Appeals before we came on the air, saying that Alina Habak cannot be the acting U.S. attorney for a district in New Jersey, and this is separate from the Tish James and James Comey challenge, which is still making its way up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we'll see whether that court affirms the lower court decision that she too was. That the prosecutor there was also not appointed correctly. That's Lindsay Halligan. So this is a separate thing. It's Alina Habba. She was Trump's personal lawyer, and he made her acting U.S. attorney within this district in the Northeast that answers to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals came down unanimously, 3-judge panel, saying they don't have the power to appoint her. She's got to go. She was not properly appointed. She's not the proper U.S. attorney. This is not a great decision for Trump. It's not a great decision to the extent it gets considered by the Fourth Circuit, that's deciding something similar, though not identical, with Lindsay Halligan. But the first thing I did when I got it, Mark, was to look at who are the judges, who was appointed, who were they appointed by. And in today's day and age, what you need to see is not just a Republican president. You need to see Trump, that it was a Trump appointee, if Trump has any fighting chance. If you see George W. Bush appointee, George H.W. Bush appointee, Reagan, you're not going to see it. You might as well see it be a Barack Obama judge. It's almost that bad. They all hate Trump. And that court was 2 W appointees and an Obama appointee. So not surprisingly, we knew how it was going to go. And that's exactly how it went. And that's kind of what I think when I see a lot of the Republicans leaking on Trump. Because clearly this came from somebody who's more, I think, right-wing aligned. They went to Miranda. I could be wrong, but it's not just Miranda. I see some of these reporting in other right-wing papers. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the Bush era people who, just because they're part of the Trump administration in some way, shape, or form, like they're currently at the FBI, does not mean that they're pro-Trump. And if you were there, even if you're a Republican, but you're a more George W. Bush Republican, you might go to the Post or the Wall Street Journal in particular and leak something very damaging to Trump, so it will look like it's, right-on-right violence. It'll look more credible to the right wing, that is. But you really hate him just as much as the left hates him. And what you almost never see is Democrats doing this to Democrats. I'm like, you're telling me there weren't terrible stories to leak about Pete Buttigieg? Bull, or Merrick Garland for that matter, or Chris Wray even. There were. It just doesn't happen.
Well, it does happen with Kamala Harris. So there's at least one exception there. There were stories like that about her and her staff. I think that it's a sad thing, but it's true. Judges are result oriented, and I used to say it all the time after Bush v. Gore, and lawyers and various political lawyers would call me and say, "No, judges are fair, justices are fair, they follow the law." No, they're almost all result oriented, and I think that's just horrible. They should be ruling based on the law. No matter who nominated them for the court. In this case, you're absolutely right that it's a cheat for a reporter to say Republicans are saying if they're Bush Republicans, because the Bushes and the Bush, Team Bush are not fans of Donald Trump, anymore, as you said, than the Team Obama is. But I'll say again, there are Republicans now who are unhappy with Kash Patel, who are Trump Republicans. There are Trump Republicans who are unhappy with Donald Trump right now. Some about the economy, some about Epstein. So you see that reflected not just at the elite level, which is I'm talking about, but you see that in the Gallup poll, but also in other even Republican polls. Republicans, for various reasons, are unhappy, even Trump Republicans, with the president right now. And his first order of business is to turn that around, not just overall, but on issues. Republicans need to be confident about the economy and his policies. They need to be confident about Epstein and his view there, et cetera. So he no doubt has problems with Bush Republicans and Reagan Republicans, but he's got some problems with Trump Republicans too now. And I know that because I talked to them directly.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
This got like the stench of some of the crazy Diddy lawsuits around it, some of which were valid and some of which were insane and completely made up. So you guys tell me what you think this one is. Okay, this is via the Daily Mail, People, TMZ, lots of them are reporting on this. There's a man named Bilal Salam who made a cameo appearance in Will Smith's 2000 movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance, who describes himself, this is him saying about himself, as a best friend for nearly 40 years of Will Smith. Now, I am being told by a source close to the case, they are not anything close to best friends, nor are they close at all. Like, they're not close. So that this is a glamour. But he's filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court seeking $3 million. And whenever I see $3 million, guys, I think, okay, did someone break your femur or your skull? Do you have permanent brain damage? What is it? No, it's intentional infliction of emotional distress. And whenever I see that claim, I think money grab. We need Mark Eiglarsh in his $20 bill, like that he likes to hang over the top of the screen and then grab it. It's a money grab. So intentional infliction is a bullshit claim, in my view, and in many courts' view, unless it's paired with a serious physical injury. Otherwise, I laugh at those claims. Sorry, Bilal Salam, I don't mean to prejudge you. Here's the other thing that tells you it's bullshit. Do you guys know what the other big problem is with his lawsuit and how it's being handled?
Because
that tells us
he's doing
bullshit?
it himself. He doesn't have a lawyer. It's pro se.
There you go.
Any lawyer
That's
with a brain
it, Phil.
doesn't take this case.
So he's representing himself. Yeah. No bueno. Okay, but let's go through it nonetheless. He spoke to the Daily Mail after filing papers. He said he is seeking justice for the atrocities committed against him by Will and Jada. Atrocities, I tell you. He clarified that while the 3 counts target Jada, he plans to file against Will as well. He alleges her alleged actions, which include her and her emissaries, included trying to bribe, intimidate, and suppress him. He says he suffered damages, the complete derailment of his personal life and career. He's suing Jada for intentional infliction because she denied to TMZ that she had ever seen her husband engage in sexual or intimate behavior with men. Now we're getting to it. He alleges that Jada confronted him in the lobby of the Regency Calabasas Commons on September 25th, 2021, while he was at a private birthday celebration for Will Smith. He alleges Pinkett Smith, Jada, was accompanied by approximately 7 members of her entourage during the confrontation. He claims that she became verbally aggressive and threatened him by stating that if he continued telling her personal business, that's a quote, he claims, that he would end up missing or catch a bullet. He also alleges that she demanded he sign a non-disclosure agreement or else. After the alleged incident, Pinkett Smith's team followed him to his car, he claims, while continuing to issue verbal threats. 6 months later, he claims there was another incident where he refused a request from a mutual friend to assist with crisis management. He thought the tasks he was asked to do were illegal, and then he started getting threatened by them, he said. And it turns out he was all this while writing a, quote, whistleblower memoir. My note reads, oh, Lord. Alleging that he faced further threats after that was discovered. He was supposed to get $500,000 for it. And now those hopes have been destroyed as a result of the pressure by these two. Last but not least, before I toss it to you, I'm sorry I have to do it, but I have to do it. This plaintiff, he went on a podcast called Unwind with Tasha K. And in this interview, he alleged something very, very ugly about Will Smith. It's very, very graphic. It actually does require a viewer warning. Please cover the children's ears. Turn down the sound if they're with you in the car, moms and dads. But here is what he's saying about Will Smith, which I think now he's claiming Jada denied, thus leading to his emotional distress. Here, watch. Hide the kids.
So, all right, I open the door to Dwayne's dressing room, and that's when I see Dwayne and having anal sex with Will.
Let me process that for a second. Who was on top?
It wasn't a top. There was a couch, and Will was bent over on the couch, and Dwayne was standing up, killing him. Murder. It was murder in there.
Boy.
Okay. What did you do?
I froze. What did you, see, I'm not used to seeing. Listen, it's traumatizing. I've never seen it. I don't watch gay porn. And I finally said, oh, shit. And they turned around and said, close the fucking door, right? So I back out the door.
Okay, just the final thought. Again, I am told by someone close to the case, this is a total money grab. This is not a close friend of theirs. This guy's been trying to hustle the family for money for years, and that there was never a meeting where Jada or any of her friends confronted or threatened him at all. So there are real questions about whether this guy has any credibility, but he's filed the lawsuit and it's getting a fair amount of coverage and attention. What do you make of it, Dave? I'll start with you on this one.
The strongest allegation he has is that Jada threatened him by saying, you'll catch a stray bullet. But even if that's to be believed, and I don't know if I believe anything this guy says, that allegation is from September 2021. That's well beyond the statute of limitations for intentional infliction of emotional distress. And this guy would know that if he had actually hired a lawyer. But no lawyer would want to file this case because it's based on crazy stuff. Like, for example, he says that it's intentional infliction of emotional distress because after she said that to him, he gained 100 pounds. Really? You're going to blame it on that? No doctor's note. He just says I gained 100. Maybe it was the brownies.
I'm going to sue my mom for intentional infliction for those middle school years.
Right, yeah. Blame who are you going to blame for like the freshman 15 when you go to college, right? I mean, it's silly. Also,
Sam Adams.
Right, exactly. He's claiming defamation. What's a defamation? He said that Jada defamed him by saying she would sue him for the sex comments, but never did. That's not defamation. So this is a strategic move to try to get money from Jada and Will Smith and perhaps to win in the court of public opinion. But so far, he's losing badly.
My feeling, Phil, is that he's banking that they would pay money to avoid that soundbite getting rerun on this show or Entertainment Tonight or TMZ. He thinks they have enough money and they care enough about Will's reputation that they would pay to stop the airing of these mere allegations. But these allegations have been out there for years about these two. If they paid off anybody who was like alleging Will was bisexual or gay, whatever, they'd have no money left.
Well, Will Smith and Jada Smith, they have enough money to hire good lawyers to sue him for defamation and other things, unlike this guy who apparently could not find a lawyer to take his case. Normally, these things are taken on a contingency basis. So any lawyer with the brain, for all the reasons Dave laid out, we just would not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole because there's not going to be any recovery. Listen to what has to be proven. And I actually had to go back and look this up to make sure I was remembering this from law school correctly. But this intentional infliction of emotional distress requires that someone intended the emotional distress, and the defendant's actions must go beyond all bounds of decency tolerated by society, often described as shocking or egregious. And then in addition to that, the defendant's alleged conduct must be the actual cause of the emotional distress. And it's got to be severe emotional distress, not just hurt feelings or anything like that.
Gained 100 pounds, Phil.
Look, it's got to be serious and of a nature that no reasonable person could be possibly expected to endure it. Now, so the things that have to be proven are a lot. And, you're going to have some really solid evidence, not to mention the fact that the claim is stale, it's old. But you got to have really solid evidence. And I'm sorry, but if you gained 100 pounds, it's going to be very difficult to try to, pinpoint how that happened.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious, too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips, too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
Sarah Beckstrom is the National Guard member who died on Thanksgiving, age 20. And what's been so disgusting in the wake of this murder and attempted murder in the case of Andrew Charles is the left wing running around trying to pretend that the issue is really that they were there in the first place, like Jane Mayer of The New Yorker out there saying this was all so unnecessary. They didn't need to be there, as if that's really the problem. Like, not that there's some lunatic who drove from Washington State to Washington, D.C. to shoot down 2 innocents in the prime of their lives, but that Trump gave the order to fortify the crime preventions in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous. They make it sound as if the United States staged an unprovoked invasion of, say, Australia, and then these 2 young people were shot, at which point you would say, well, why were they there? But that's not what happened. The District of Columbia is a federal district. It is under federal control. It's not a state. It's not a foreign country. The federal government is allowed to deploy federal agents in the federal district. So once you get past that, then what Jane Mayer and others effectively are saying is the equivalent of saying, well, if you don't like the police, you can just shoot them. Which is crazy. Of course you can't. This is the fundamental presumption beneath our civilization. that we do not kill people just because we have a problem with them. Now, we don't know precisely what the person who shot them was trying to achieve, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether he was upset that they were there. It doesn't matter whether he was trying to commit some secondary crime. It doesn't matter whether he had political or religious objections. It doesn't matter whether he equated them in some way with ICE or other federal agents. Perhaps he was upset about taxes. That doesn't give him the right to kill IRS agents. You cannot do this. It is not just stupid to say, well, of course, if they hadn't been there, they wouldn't have been shot because someone else would have been, the police. It is evil. That is not how it works in the United States. But I think, unfortunately, it is representative of a particular sort of progressive thinking, which holds that if, for whatever reason, you, being the progressive elite, don't like someone, whether that be the deployment of the National Guard in DC, or ICE performing and enforcing immigration law, or, say, Charlie Kirk saying things they didn't like, then it's sort of understandable. They wouldn't go so far as to say it's justified, but it's sort of understandable, and you have to take that into consideration when looking at the story. And Ken Delaney on MS Now, which is formerly MSNBC.
Oh, I have it.
He said, well, you want to play it? Because he essentially said this.
Let me play it. Let me play it. Here it is. Sat 11.
But of course, there's so much controversy happening in the United States right now with ICE, who are also wearing uniforms and wearing masks, and so there's you don't know people walking around with uniforms in an American city. There are some Americans that might object to that, and so apparently this shooting has happened.
There are some Americans who might object to that, and so apparently this shooting has happened because people walking around with uniforms, people might object to it, Charlie.
Well, so how dare he say that? How dare he say that? As I say, he's not going to come out and say it was justified or they came close. He's going to hint at it. There are all manner of things that I object to, Megyn. I don't like the federal income tax. I didn't like Obamacare. I don't like some of our gun control laws. There's no way Ken Delaney will go on TV and say, well, of course, the president just signed an increase in the tax rate so that an IRS agent was killed, so that happened. There's no way he would say that the HHS
what about abortion?
department...
Planned Parenthood.
Right, that's another one for 50 years. Now, of course, there were a few people, a handful on the fringes during the Roe v. Wade era who did target abortion doctors. But do you know what people at National Review said? They said, don't do that, that's murder. Don't do that. That is a fundamental break in the social contract. So this is a crazy
and Ken
approach.
Wasn't out there saying, well, yeah, abortions make a lot of people upset.
Right.
He wasn't saying that.
Right.
It only works one way, Rich, and it's obvious. And it's like, to me, the difference is between, as a lawyer, cause and fact and proximate cause. If I get into a car accident, God forbid, and hurt somebody, am I the proximate cause of that accident? Maybe I am. Is my mom the cause, in fact, of that accident? In a way, if you want to go back that far, she gave birth to me. President Trump, also the parents of those two poor National Guardsmen. Yeah, they're to blame. They didn't stop them from joining the National Guard. Trump is to blame. He deployed the National Guard. Maybe their coffee maker was to blame because had it not worked that morning, they would have been 5 minutes late. It's like you don't spend time in the cause and fact place. When you're a news person, you talk about the proximate cause of what led to this terrible thing. And by anyone's measure, there is one person and one person alone to blame for this. And it's this Afghani guy we brought back here after we pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021.
Yeah. And the idea that wearing uniforms is a provocation. All sorts of people wear uniforms, right? Who else wears uniforms? Cops. Cops are ambushed. Several years ago under de Blasio, there's a cop sitting in his car in Queens and was shot in the head. Are we supposed to say, oh, he should have parked there? Or he shouldn't have been in the car? Or those Dallas officers in that awful ambush that, 15, 12 something, shot, a number of them killed. Was it their fault? Should they have not been there? Some people don't like police. Maybe it was their fault. So this is hideous stuff. And maybe one effect from this will be that it actually humanizes the National Guard members. They aren't going to these cities cracking heads. They're not some alien force. They're by and large young people, upstanding, patriotic, want to do their duty. And what they're doing largely in Washington, D.C. is providing a symbol of public order that in no way justifies any act of violence against them, any harassment against them, and of course, in no way justifies murdering them.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious, too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips, too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone. So what do we make of this guy? Because I realize a lot of people went to the fact of he was unvetted. There are too many who were let in after the withdrawal who were unvetted. And there were. That's true. But it does not appear that this guy was necessarily one of them, because he went through a lot of vetting. And my next guest coming on after you guys is going to walk us through some of that. But even the administration is suggesting they think the guy was radicalized here, which is like, oh, jeez, like, great, Rich. What do we do with that? So he got here, and life was so miserable for him, or he had some sort of a break. I don't know. Now we're getting all the articles about how sad he was. I don't really care. Who gives a shit how sad he was? He was a sad terrorist who yelled Allahu Akbar as he took Sarah Beckstrom's life. Boo fucking who? But it is interesting if he got radicalized here, because he was a few years earlier helping us and then was yelling Allahu Akbar as he shot 2 of our service personnel.
Yeah. So it's very hard to see how you filter out for this, right? If he either had a mental break or he was radicalized once he was here, or a combination of those two, it's very hard to vet for that. And my take, we talked about this before, is we just need fewer numbers. You make fewer mistakes if you're letting fewer people in the first place, and we should be very cautious about people from alien cultures. I think there should always be a humanitarian element to our immigration policy, but refugees from, maybe we'll talk a little bit about Minnesota too, from Somalia are going to have a hard time assimilating. It's a totally different culture. Somalia doesn't have anything to do with us. There's no reason we should be giving asylum to those people, or that if they're refugees, they shouldn't be going someplace nearby Somalia where they might speak the language, where the culture is familiar. Yes. And it would be easier for them to go back. That's supposed to be part of the process. You hope refugees eventually return to their native country, and it'd be much easier for a Minneapolis to assimilate the Somali immigrants if, say, there were 10,000 rather than 80,000. So I don't think there's an easy answer to this guy's case. At least it doesn't look like there was. You'd hope when we're granting asylum, by the way, that it's not just, do you have a fear of persecution back home, which he certainly did, but whether you're sane or not, and an upstanding member of the community or not. And with the Trump administration kicking the tires now in the asylum process, you hope that's something they're looking at.
Well, there was this group that was monitoring him, Charlie, this like immigration, I don't know what it's called. It's got some long official sounding name, but it wasn't really a governmental organization. It was a left-leaning organization that realized he was suicidal. And as far as I can tell, told no one. Did not, it's problematic because, to the points that Rich was just making, you bring these people who have a totally different background, totally different upbringing, who, let's face it, grow up in a place where the jihad is very frequent, common, familiar, and not nearly as frowned upon as it is here. And then you unleash them in the United States, even when they were so-called good guys, with only a left-leaning bleeding heart, like checking in on them every once in a while. And are we totally shocked that this is what happened?
Well, also, although of course it is not the case that most people who come here from Islamic countries are radicalized, they are more likely to be radicalized than, say, me, because they come from a background in which the messages they're receiving are normal. If somebody came up to me and started talking about radical Islam, I think I would look at them funny. Also,
so you're radicalized on some things, Charlie, just in a good way.
That's true. I'm radicalized on the American experiment.
On the government repayment. The government repayment of students' debt.
That's
Kamala
right.
Harris.
But I managed to avoid killing anyone in the process. I just wrote very furiously at my keyboard in the grand tradition of American rebels. But look, it's more difficult to vet people from Afghanistan than it is people from England or Japan or Australia. And that's another thing we have to bear in mind. He may have been vetted, but the information that the federal government was able to look at when I applied to become a permanent resident and then a citizen was comprehensive, because I came from a stable country in which the bureaucracy and the government have long been fairly competent. And that is true of people from France or from Germany or from Australia or Japan or what you will. It's just not the case for people from the third world. There aren't many records in failed Islamic states such as Afghanistan. And that is, when we hear the word vetted, that's something we ought to bear in mind. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, you don't let anyone in from anywhere that isn't a Western country. But it does mean you have to have a different approach, because you just can't know the paper trail in an Afghanistan, as opposed to, say, a Germany, is worthwhile.
By the way, the name of the group that was supposed to be keeping an eye on him is the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, which sounds so nice and official, but really it's just some left-leaning group that's supposed to, I guess, ease their way into the country and keep one eye on them. And the person did accurately deduce that he was feeling suicidal, did not accurately deduce that he was feeling homicidal, and if they did nothing about it. So what's the point of the group? Not just that, but the guy drove cross-country to commit this murder. It was cold-blooded. And now I'm really kind of sick of the how sad he was stories, but they continue to pop up. He was sad, really sad. You know who else is sad? The family of Andrew Wolf and Sarah Beckstrom. That's who I have ink and patience for, not this guy's family.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party and the Megyn Kelly Wrap-Up Show on SiriusXM Channel 111. It's Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025, and this is your AM Update.
This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth defending the second strike on a suspected drug vessel at a newsy cabinet meeting. The results of the crucial special election in Tennessee are in.
Look, I think the man's a grossly incompetent man.
Democrat Governor of Minnesota Tim Walz under fire following reports of rampant fraud in his state. And one of America's wealthiest families makes a historic donation set to benefit millions of children. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update.
Do doctors have Cyber Monday sales? The doctors at Brickhouse Nutrition do, and this is your last chance to save 30% on everything. It's the final hours of their biggest sale of the year with trusted health products, all 30% off. Like Lean, the doctor-formulated weight loss supplement for people who want to lose meaningful weight without injections. And 30% off Creatone as well. That's creatine designed just for women to help you look leaner, in shape, and toned without extra dieting or exercise. Even 30% off Field of Greens, a superfruit and vegetable drink they say was shown in a university study to actually slow aging. Yes, every Brickhouse product from Better Sleep to Superior Collagen is 30% off. This is your last chance to save during the Brickhouse Nutrition Cyber Monday sale. Visit brickhousesale.com and save 30%. brickhousesale.com, brickhousesale.com.
President Trump holding the 9th and final cabinet meeting of the year yesterday, equaling the number of cabinet meetings President Biden held over his entire presidency. Cameras welcomed in for the 2+ hour gathering, which covered a wide range of topics. Near the top of the meeting, President Trump commenting on the 2 National Guard soldiers from West Virginia who were ambushed last week by an Afghan national while on patrol in D.C.
I want to pay my deepest respects to those two incredible people from the National Guard in West Virginia they came from. I spoke to their parents. Sarah is gone. She passed away. She's looking down on us now. And we have one young man who's fighting for his life. He's fighting very hard. I think he's probably doing better than anybody. And they said he didn't have a chance. I'll tell you, the one who said he's going to live is his mother. He spoke to his mother. Sir, he's going to live. If he lives, it would be amazing. A miracle, actually. We're very proud of those two people. We're very proud of the National Guard. We're very proud of our military and our police and our firemen and women.
24-year-old Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf remains in critical condition. But on Monday, West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey announcing Wolf gave a thumbs up to the nurse and wiggled his toes, a positive sign. Yesterday, suspect Ramanola Lockenwall, appearing virtually in D.C. court, pleading not guilty to all charges. The judge ordering Lockenwall held without bond. Elsewhere in the cabinet meeting, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth saying the U.S. military has only just begun striking drug trafficking boats. Yesterday, Secretary Hegseth providing insight on how the much-debated September operation went down.
I wish everybody could be in the room watching our professionals. The deliberative process, the detail, the rigorous, the intel, the legal, the evidence-based way that we're able to know who's on it, what they're doing, what they're carrying. All these white bales are not Christmas gifts from Santa. No one's fishing on a submarine. And I have empowered them to make that call. Now, the first couple of strikes, I said, I'm going to be the one to make the call. That was September 2nd. I watched that first strike live. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. And by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat.
Secretary Hegseth asked if he personally saw any survivors after the first strike.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire, smoke, you can't see anything, you got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand. You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick and you plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous sources not based in anything, not based in any truth at all. And then you want to throw out really irresponsible terms about American heroes.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer yesterday morning calling on the secretary to release the full, unedited tape of the strikes as the House and Senate probe the issue. While the majority of the suspected boats taken out by the military are believed to have ties to Venezuela. President Trump putting all traffickers, land and sea, on notice.
If they come in through a certain country or any country, or if we think they're building mills for whether it's fentanyl or cocaine. I hear Colombia, the country of Colombia, is making cocaine. They have cocaine manufacturing plants, okay? And then they sell us their cocaine. We appreciate that very much. But yeah, anybody that's doing that and selling it into our country is subject to attack.
So not necessarily just Venezuela?
No, not just Venezuela, no.
The results are in from the final House showdown of 2025, the special election in Tennessee's 7th district to replace Republican Congressman Mark Green, who resigned earlier this year to enter the private sector. Republican Matt Van Epps, a decorated helicopter pilot and lieutenant colonel in the Tennessee Army National Guard, defeating Democrat Afton Bain, a representative in the state house. The contest drawing in millions in outside spending, despite the district's deep Republican lean. Democrats aiming for one final momentum boost heading into the 2026 midterm season. The race ultimately finishing much closer than past election cycles. Heavy hitters for both parties pulling out all the stops. President Trump on Monday dialing into a Van Epps rally.
Number one, she hates Christianity. Number two, she hates country music. How the hell can you elect a person like that? So I just want to give my total support, and he's had it right from the beginning, to Matt Van Epps. He's going to be a fantastic congressman. He's going to represent you so well, and we'll keep our agenda going.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez acknowledging the steep climb in this ad released yesterday afternoon in the final hours of voting.
Tennessee is ready to elect. Ask him. to run for office in an R+22 seat takes a very special kind of person. And it's not just about an ideology, but it is about a character, a kind of person that says, we're not going to do something because it's easy. We're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. Sometimes when an everyday person sticks their hand up to say, I just want to stand up and fight for my neighbors, really beautiful things can happen. Miracles can happen.
Van Epps delivering celebratory remarks to a crowd of supporters.
Thank you all. This is just an incredible win. An incredible win. Tonight, you've sent a message loud and clear. The people of Middle Tennessee stand with President Donald J. Trump and stood firmly behind our campaign. I am humbled beyond belief to stand before you tonight as your next representative.
Here, a moment from Boehner's concession speech.
I know tonight was not what the results we wanted, but nobody in Washington believed we could get even this close. This was a 22-point race. They created these districts to be uncompetitive, but they don't understand Tennessee. They don't understand the South. They don't understand our stubborn hope of people who have been underestimated for decades. But you all understood it. You carried hope, and because of you, you put them on the run in a district they thought they could buy easy double digits, and we showed them that is not the case.
With this result, the House balance of power will rest at 220 Republicans to 213 Democrats once Van Epps is officially sworn in, which is likely to happen within days. Coming up, Minnesota under the microscope following widespread reports of fraud on Governor Tim Walz's watch, and a generous gift to American children from one of America's wealthiest families.
I've been talking a lot about Riverbend Ranch because I love their steaks. Well, this holiday season, express your love with a very special gift of premium steaks from Riverbend Ranch. They have spectacular beef bundles that are wonderful gifts to friends and family. Their prime rib roast and holiday bundles are only available while supplies last, and they're going fast. For the last 35 years, Riverbend Ranch has been creating an elite Angus herd by using ultrasound technology to identify genetically superior cattle with a focus on flavor and tenderness. All Riverbend Ranch cattle are born and raised in the USA. They never use growth hormones or antibiotics, and the beef is processed right at the ranch in their award-winning USDA-inspected processing facility. Avoid the costly middlemen because the beef is sent directly from Riverbend Ranch to your home. This is not your average black Angus beef. Order from riverbendranch.com. Use the promo code Megyn for $20 off your first order, and let me know what you think. riverbendranch.com, promo code Megyn.
Minnesota under more scrutiny this week. The City Journal reporting on numerous fraud scandals that have come to light since Democrat governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, took office in 2019, perpetrated mostly by members of the Somali community, which has a large politically active presence in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. The feds so far prosecuting and convicting dozens related to three major schemes: a meals program for needy children called Feeding Our Future, a program for individuals at risk of homelessness, and an autism therapy program. The New York Times later reporting total fraud losses surpassing $1 billion. The Trump administration yesterday ordering ICE to target undocumented Somali immigrants in the Twin Cities. CBS News reporting the operation is expected to begin in the coming days. U.S. Congressman from Minnesota, Republican Tom Emmer, yesterday on Fox, saying the breadth of this fraud smacks of more than just negligence.
Al-Shabaab controls all the financial infrastructure in Somalia. That's right. This money has gone back to Somalia. Ergo, common sense would tell you that millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars from Minnesotans, has gone to terrorists known as Al-Shabaab in Somalia. This is an awful situation. Tim Walz should be held accountable, and somebody in his administration, I'm just going to leave you with this, over $1 billion, Lawrence, you can't tell me that that's just negligent oversight. That's right. Someone is complicit, and maybe it's the governor because of his being he's not a smart man.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Monday posting to X, quote, At my direction, the Treasury Department is investigating allegations that under the feckless mismanagement of the Biden administration and Governor Tim Walz, hardworking Minnesotans' tax dollars may have been diverted to the terrorist organization Al-Shabaab. Thanks to the leadership of President Trump, we are acting fast to ensure Americans' taxes are not funding acts of global terror. In addition to the federal probes, Chair of the House Oversight Committee, Republican James Comer, announcing the committee will, quote, conduct a thorough investigation into Governor Walz's failure to safeguard taxpayer dollars. Congressman Comer telling the New York Post Governor Walz was warned about fraud relating to the Feeding Our Future program and failed to do anything about it. According to the Post, the Minnesota Department of Education initially halted payments in 2020 when it first became aware of fraud reports, but Walz reactivated the money flow when Feeding Our Future sued, alleging racism. Earlier this week, Governor Walz accusing President Trump of demonizing the Somali community and deflecting from his own administration. Yesterday, the governor posting to X, quote, we welcome support in investigating and prosecuting crime, but pulling a PR stunt and indiscriminately targeting immigrants is not a real solution to a problem. President Trump asked yesterday if the governor, who is seeking a third term, should resign.
Look, I think the man's a grossly incompetent man. I thought that from the day I watched JD destroy him in a debate. But when I watch what is happening in Minnesota, Somalians ripped off that state for billions of dollars. Billions. Every year. Billions of dollars. And they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. They complained. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell, and they complain, and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country.
Dell Technologies founder and CEO Michael Dell, along with his wife Susan, on Tuesday announcing a massive donation totaling $6.25 billion to millions of American children via the Trump Accounts program, signed into law as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The bill creating new tax-advantaged investment accounts for children under 18 through the Treasury Department. Up to $5,000 per year can be contributed to the accounts, which the child can access at age 18 to pay for college, buy a home, or start a business. If the child decides not to withdraw the money at that time, it then functions as a retirement account. Eligible children born from 2025 to 2028 will receive $1,000 in seed money from the Treasury to kickstart their investments. President Trump inviting the Dells to the White House to announce their contribution.
Michael and Susan Dell are committing to one of the largest private donations in American history. In honor of America's 250th anniversary, the Dells are announcing today that they are giving 25 million American children $250 each to save and to invest in their personal Trump account. Now, that's the equivalent of $6.25 billion. These gifts will be available to the first 25 million children aged 10 and under the zip codes where their median income is $150,000 or less. This will give millions of dollars, millions of children, middle-class families a stake in American prosperity, a benefit from the rising stock market, and a better shot at the American dream. It really gives them a shot at the American dream.
The Dells then speaking about their contribution, which will apply specifically to children who do not qualify for the $1,000 seed money.
We believe the smartest investment that we can make is an investment in children. Susan and I are super excited to announce our $6.25 billion gift to 25 million American children, 10 and under, and our gift will cover most of the children that are 10 and under that are not part of the federal program.
We believe that when children have a future that they can see is worth saving for, then that will help build hope and opportunity and prosperity for generations to come. So we're so excited to be doing this and hope to have many people join in our efforts.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent encouraging more philanthropists and companies to follow the Dells in donating to American children.
Americans are the most generous people in the history of the world, and the Trump accounts will provide a vehicle for philanthropists such as Michael and Susan and many more to contribute. It can be tailored, it can be to employees, it could be a philanthropist could adopt a state, they can adopt a school, they can adopt a zip code, they can adopt a street. So we will constantly see these accounts be topped up. Michael and Susan have led the way, but I think that there's a chance that every Tuesday can become Giving Tuesday as more and more philanthropists see the power of this, of giving to American families, giving to American children, and giving everyone a stake in our great economy.
That'll do it for your AM update. I'm Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party. Catch The Megyn Kelly Show live on SiriusXM's The Megyn Kelly Channel 111 at noon East on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly and all podcast platforms.
We have our own exclusive reporting in response to the hit that came out yesterday, this report attacking Kash Patel and to a lesser extent, Dan Bongino. We broke some of this news on our AM update, but I have more to tell you today. That is direct from Kash Patel himself with his authorization that it be on the record. Just by way of background, what happened was a group called the National Alliance of Retired and Active Duty FBI special agents and analysts issued a report. This report, we're told, is going to be presented to Congress later this week. It's called a pulse check of the first 6 months of the Patel leadership, February through August. And it calls the FBI a chronically underperforming agency, in part because of Kash's political partisanship. It reveals a troubling picture, they say. This is after their interviews with rank and file, current and former agents, of a chronically underperforming agency debilitated by low confidence in FBI leadership, based on a lack of prior experience, a historically toxic culture of fear and operational paralysis, and deep-seated internal partisanship. They go on, and I'll go through some of the allegations. But the biggest thing that they point to that's been used to embarrass or try to Kash Patel is a story that when Kash went out to the Charlie Kirk assassination guys, that he showed up there via his airplane, and he didn't have an FBI jacket, and that he, like a high school girl wanting to be in the right outfit at the big football game, refused to leave the vehicle, the plane, until he got the proper threads on him. He wouldn't leave until he got an FBI jacket, and that on top of that, he demanded a patch to make him look like badass. So that one of the local guys had to take off a patch and give him the patch so that he looked tougher. That's the implication. Well, I've spoken with Kash Patel, and he said none of that is true. His initial denials and the real facts about where the FBI is, they call it rudderless. The FBI is actually truly setting records on its arrest rates, on violent crimes, gangs, and so on. But it's all an AM update. But on this particular incident, which was meant to personally humiliate him, obviously, he says it's not true. He says he flew from New York directly out to Utah. He had no proper clothing. He was out to dinner when he learned about Charlie. So he did borrow an FBI jacket. He said the patches piece of the story is also not true. He said a guy who worked one of the special divisions out in Utah actually gave him a patch as like a solidarity, the way a lot of law enforcement will give you like a coin or whatever. He gave it to him because he wanted the FBI director to feel like part of the crew. And Patch, to respect this guy and say thanks for, giving this to me, put it on his arm and got off the plane. He said there was no waiting on the plane to get a jacket. There was no waiting on the plane to get a patch. He said we ran off the plane. We understood Charlie had been murdered. It was a tumultuous time. And that just none of this is true. And I got to tell you guys something. When I went through yesterday, because Miranda Devine had an explosive report yesterday. She, as always, is a great reporter. But then later, the actual 110 or some odd page report dropped. And as I actually went through it, the complaints in here, boys. I mean, okay, I'll give you an example. The deep-seated internal partisanship, is there because because of the FBI director who previously campaigned for the president as a vocal critic of the FBI. Too fucking bad. Also left-leaning factions embedded who have TDS. I accept that. There is increasing dislike for Trump in the FBI, they say. The number of FBI employees exhibiting TDS is much more widespread than it was within the FBI. Then they go on to say, agents are upset about the January 6 pardons. A subsource, who's an FBI employee, reported he or she is demoralized that the president pardoned those rightfully convicted for their role in January 6. Well, take it up with Oprah. Why is that? Why does Kash Patel have to run around talking to an individual? This is a one-person complaint from the sound of it. They go on to say, Patel is allegedly paralyzed. FBI personnel, predominantly those members of FBI management, are afraid of losing their jobs. They are making operational decisions based on that fear. Some FBI managers are waiting for the FBI director to tell them specifically what to do. And they're not doing anything because they're waiting on those directions. This reads like a struggle session that you would have it like a self-help weekend away. And the conclusion of these guys in this report is you better listen to Kash Patel. Every opinion matters. You have to reprogram the mindset from hyper defensive to full receive mode and commit to embracing feedback. And then you must execute on the recommendations. This sounds like a BLM session, like the Wall Street Journal kids who tried to pull this shit onto the WSJ during the George Floyd-a-palooza. And WSJ said, yeah, we hear you. We understand your feelings. Get out if you don't want to work here. It's a news organization. Rich, I'm sorry, but this is like, I'm not persuaded. And this is not just because I like Kash and Dan. I was perfectly ready to criticize them. This sounds like bullshit.
Yeah, so the jacket story, classic kind of BS story. And it goes back to the Hegseth Washington Post story. I learned long ago in the Trump era, you don't believe anything that allegedly happened in private or that was said in private. I mean, they lied about things Trump said on camera in the Lester Holt interview about why he fired James Comey, what he said about the Charlottesville protests. So I don't believe anything that's reported about something that happened in private, unless there's some written record of it. And this is a classic story that feels like the jacket thing. It's just made up. It's hearsay, repeated 2 or 3 times by people who hate the guy and want to embarrass him. So I put no credibility in that whatsoever, and his denial sounds totally credible. Now, look, this is a huge institutional and organizational lift for him. He's never had a job like this. I'm sure things have been shaky because he's inexperienced. We saw some of that in public and how he handled the Charlie Kirk assassination, saying whether we had a suspect in custody or not and having to change a couple times on that. But on the other hand, there's an entrenched bureaucracy that's going to be hostile to his priorities and hostile to his politics. So this is not. I don't take any of this very very seriously, but it comes with the job for Kash.
Yeah, well, exactly. And Miranda's a straight reporter, but the question is, what's in the ingredients of the report that she was basing her report on? And here's the thing: he raised with me, Charlie Kash did. The FBI is doing a good job. They allege it's rudderless, directionless, people are paralyzed. These are some of the stats we listed in AM Update today. Under Kash's leadership, the Bureau has made almost 30,000 arrests this year. That's a 100% increase from 2024, 25,000 of those for violent crimes. Over 100 MS-13 gang members, over 200 plus Tren de Aragua members. 6,000 missing children have been found. That's a 22% increase over last year. 1,700 child predators have been arrested, up 10% over last year. Human trafficking arrests, up 15% from last year. Domestic terrorism arrests, up 30%. 1,900 kilos of fentanyl have been seized. 4 of the top 10 most wanted criminals have been nabbed. That's the same number President Biden's FBI nabbed in 4 years sitting in office. So to me, this just smacks of they don't like him. They don't like Dan. The FBI, I'm talking about the FBI rank and file. And that hasn't changed just because they got rid of DEI, et cetera.
So I'm very far from being an expert in the internal workings of the FBI. I'm also not a great fan of the FBI. What I do know, though, is how the US Constitution works. And all of the criticisms that you read are irrelevant under our system of government. I am also a critic of the January 6 pardons. But Donald Trump is the duly elected president of the United States. He's the head of the executive branch. And if you cannot, as an FBI agent or any other agent of the federal government, work for the president, then you have to resign. Likewise, Donald Trump chose Kash Patel to be in that role as the head of that agency. If you don't like him, then you have to leave. If you look back to the beginning of this republic, the idea that people would stay on between presidencies was absurd. Now, over time, we've developed this professional bureaucracy. There are good sides to that. There are bad sides to that. But the deal is that as a government employee, you work for the president until you can't. So if you've been in the FBI or any other agency in the last 15 years, you've worked under Barack Obama and Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and now Donald Trump again. Those are very different people. They've done very different things. Half the country likes one of those guys. The other half does not. So I think unless there is a lot more to the report, I think the answer to that is nobody cares. The notion that the military in particular, but police forces ought to be subordinate to the civil power is one of the core elements in America. So, I don't know if you need to go see Oprah, but if you're upset with your leadership, then suck it up, because that is how our democracy works, and you wouldn't want it any other way.
It's very strange, Rich, to read this from a FBI agents. Like you have to receive the information. You have to do something about it. Make them feel seen and heard. Oh my God! I mean, like if I heard this from my staff, I'd be like, "You need to go work for somebody else." I'm not the make you feel seen and heard kind of person.
Yeah, you want the FBI guys to be guys with crew cuts that take orders and go take down bad guys and don't spend their time backbiting and whining, which is what this report sounds like.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. I think we've gone from bad to worse, but I'm going to muddle through it because I've got some news for you. It's Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025, and this is your AM Update. AM Update with new and exclusive reaction from FBI Director Kash Patel to an attack on FBI leadership from anonymous agents.
Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes.
The White House confirms a second strike was ordered on a suspected drug vessel as President Trump's top advisors discuss next moves in Venezuela.
It shows a cold, calculated, premeditated murder. It is the lock that any prosecutor wants.
And Luigi Mangione in a New York courtroom seeking to exclude key evidence in his trial. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update. We talk a lot about personal responsibility on this show. Well, here's one aspect that's really important: your health. And I'm not talking about following whatever the experts recommend. I'm talking about real, data-driven decisions based on your body's actual numbers. We demand transparency in government, but most of us have no idea what's happening inside of our own bodies, never mind inside of DC. Disease can develop silently for years before symptoms appear. By then, you're playing catch-up with expensive treatments instead of preventing problems when they're cheap and easy to fix. Well, I want to tell you about Gevity. They are revolutionizing preventative care with something radically different. 100 plus blood markers tested at your home. Personalized supplement packs shipped directly to you based on your deficiencies. Biannual retesting to track progress, plus ongoing virtual consultations on your schedule. This is healthcare independence. And you get 20% off at gojevity.com/Megyn with code Megyn when you check out. That's gojeviti.com/Megyn, because no one should control your health decisions but you. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt yesterday confirming reports that a second strike was conducted on an alleged drug boat heading for America on September 2nd, as two suspected narco-terrorists who survived the first strike clung to the battered boat in the sea. The Washington Post reporting Friday the, quote, double tap was ordered by Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley. This following an earlier order prior to the initial strike from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, authorizing kinetic strikes to take out these vessels. The Washington Post and subsequent reporting intensely focusing on the legality of Admiral Bradley's order, contending that the survivors did not pose an ongoing threat to the U.S., which actually has not yet been confirmed. As adjunct Cornell law professor and retired U.S. Army soldier Brian Cox has argued and will explain today live on the MK Show, if this boat were just disabled, as the Washington Post reports, and not entirely destroyed after strike number 1, the order to strike again would be entirely legal. Caroline Leavitt from yesterday's briefing reading a prepared statement moments after denying that the order for the second strike came directly from Secretary Hegseth.
President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated. And I would just add one more point to remind the American public why these lethal strikes are taking place. Because this administration has designated these narco-terrorists as foreign terrorist organizations. The president has a right to take them out if they are threatening the United States of America and if they are bringing illegal narcotics that are killing our citizens at a record rate, which is what they are doing. And under the previous administration, there was enough fentanyl trafficked into our country to kill every American man, woman, and child many times over.
Leavitt saying Admiral Bradley ordered the second strike, but stopping short of addressing whether it was intended specifically to kill survivors. The Post initially reporting 4 strikes total on the boat, 2 to kill everyone, and 2 more to fully sink the wreckage. The topic consuming about half of the briefing, with intense focus on the nature of the order itself.
Was the initial order from Secretary Hegseth, everyone be killed, and did that come from President Trump?
I saw that quoted in a Washington Post story. I would reject that the Secretary of War ever said that. However, the president has made it quite clear that if narco-terrorists, again, are trafficking illegal drugs towards the United States, he has the authority to kill them. And that's what this administration is doing.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries reacting bluntly at a press conference.
The White House is lying, but that's no surprise because they lie for a living and the American people know it.
The House and Senate Armed Services Committees, led by Republicans, launching inquiries into the matter. Secretary Hegseth posting on social media yesterday evening, quote, "Let's make one thing crystal clear. Admiral Mitch Bradley is an American hero, a true professional, and has my 100% support. I stand by him and the combat decisions he has made on the September 2nd mission and all others since." Also yesterday, President Trump meeting with his national security team in the Oval to discuss Venezuela. CNN reporting Secretary Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Raisin Kane, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, among those in attendance. The president ramping up pressure on Venezuela in recent weeks as part of a campaign to crack down on cartels trafficking drugs into the U.S. U.S. military ships and troops amassing in the region. Last week, President Trump saying operations to halt trafficking via land routes would begin very soon. On Saturday, President Trump posting to Truth Social, quote, To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety, leading many to wonder if U.S. intervention is imminent. On Sunday, President Trump confirming he had recently spoken to President Maduro.
The New York Times reported that you had a phone call with Maduro. Did you?
I don't want to comment on it. The answer is yes.
And can you tell us a little bit
No,
about
I can't do that.
Did you say it went well?
I wouldn't say it went well or badly. It was a phone call.
Last week, the administration designating President Maduro as the head of a foreign terrorist organization, saying he and other members of his government head the Cartel de los Solis, a step U.S. officials say provides wider legal authority to conduct operations inside Venezuela. Coming up, a new report goes after FBI Director Kash Patel. Director Patel responds on the record to AM Update. And accused murderer Luigi Mangione is in court seeking the dismissal of critical pieces of evidence. Do doctors have Cyber Monday sales? The doctors at Brick House Nutrition do, and this is your last chance to save 30% on everything. It's the final hours of their biggest sale of the year with trusted health products, all 30% off. Like Lean, the doctor-formulated weight loss supplement for people who want to lose meaningful weight without injections, and 30% off Creatone as well. That's creatine designed just for women to help you look leaner, in shape, and toned without extra dieting or exercise. Even 30% off Field of Greens, a superfruit and vegetable drink they say was shown in a university study to actually slow aging. Yes, every Brick House product, from Better Sleep to Superior Collagen, is 30% off. This is your last chance to save during the Brick House Nutrition Cyber Monday sale. Visit brickhousesale.com and save 30%. brickhousesale.com, brickhousesale.com. A new report compiled by a group of active duty and retired FBI agents painting an unflattering image of FBI Director Kash Patel and, to a lesser degree, his Deputy Director Dan Bongino. The 115-page report, a mostly scathing assessment of Patel's first 6 months in office, reportedly set to be presented to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees this week. The New York Post's Miranda Devine getting her hands on the report, which labels the FBI, quote, a rudderless ship under Director Patel, whom the document concludes is, quote, in over his head. The report, citing multiple internal FBI sources, accuses Director Patel of lacking, quote, the breadth of experience needed to be successful. Another source saying the director, quote, lacks the requisite experience to be FBI director. Devine posting on X yesterday that, quote, for those claiming this report is from a bunch of disgruntled FBI staffers who don't like change or are salty ex-FBI critics of Kash and Dan, you're wrong. It's from an alliance of patriotic operational insiders opposed to the abuses and corruption of the FBI, which accelerated under Joe Biden. AM Update spoke exclusively with Director Patel about the report, who rejected that characterization, dismissing the report as a, quote, dossier compiled by anonymous, disgruntled sources, end quote, whom he argued do not know what they're talking about. He scoffed at the notion that the FBI is, quote, rudderless, pointing out that under his leadership, the Bureau has made almost 30,000 arrests this year, a 100% increase from 2024, 25,000 of those for violent crimes, including over 100 MS-13 gang members and 200 plus Tren de Aragua members. 6,000 missing children have been found, a 22% increase over last year. 1,700 child predators have been arrested. That's up 10% from last year. Human trafficking arrests are up 15% from last year. Domestic terrorism arrests up 30%. 1,900 kilos of fentanyl have been seized. That's enough to kill 127 million Americans. 4 of the top 10 most wanted criminals in the U.S. have been nabbed under his leadership. That's the same number President Biden's FBI arrested over 4 years. In short, Director Patel maintains the numbers speak for themselves. This FBI is succeeding beyond anyone's expectations. Director Patel also responding to allegations in the report of his alleged behavior around the Charlie Kirk murder. We will have that piece of the story for you on the MK Show later today. Last week, MS Now reporting 3 unnamed sources saying President Trump is considering removing Director Patel as top aides grow frustrated by the negative headlines. Caroline Leavitt calling that report completely made up, with the president himself weighing in, saying of Patel, quote, "I think he's doing a great job." Luigi Mangione in New York State Court yesterday for the start of a multi-day pretrial hearing, asking a judge to exclude evidence collected during his arrest last year. The defense arguing Mangione's rights were violated when cops searched his backpack and questioned him before obtaining a warrant and reading him his Miranda rights. 27-year-old Mangione, accused of assassinating United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside of a Manhattan hotel on December 4th, 2024. The brutal slaying captured on surveillance video showing the suspect approaching Thompson from behind and opening fire at close range before fleeing. Thompson hit in the back and in the leg, dying from his injuries. Prosecutors say the words deny, delay, and depose were written on the ammunition, echoing a phrase used to describe how insurance companies dodge paying claims. They argue that they have a substantial body of evidence against Mangione, including video placing him at the scene of the shooting and a manifesto obtained from his backpack upon arrest. The attack leading to a 5-day manhunt, cops arresting Mangione at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, about 230 miles from Manhattan. Former prosecutor Joey Jackson on CNN explaining the rules governing police interrogations and the circumstances requiring Miranda warnings.
Does the prosecution acknowledge they never told Mangione he has a right to remain silent?
Indeed, they do. But however, there are other arguments, even though they eventually did. But at the time that they were making an accusation towards him, if it's a custodial interrogation, doesn't mean you're in cuffs. But if you're not free to leave and they're asking questions that could incriminate you, you have to give Miranda. However, if you're simply investigating a case and not really questioning him such that you're eliciting guilty statements, you don't. And so there's a fine line with respect to investigatory information being supplied and incriminatory, meaning you're looking for evidence to incriminate them. The police say we just needed to know what the lay of the land was, and that was the basis upon which we asked those questions.
While cops were talking to Mangione, one officer searching his backpack, saying she wanted to ensure there, quote, wasn't a bomb or anything inside. Mangione's team arguing that statement was, quote, designed to cover up an illegal warrantless search of the backpack. In the bag, cops finding a loaded magazine, silencer, 3D printed gun, electronic devices, and a journal. According to court filings, Mangione's journal allegedly containing an entry reading, quote, I finally feel confident about what I will do. The target is insurance. It checks every box. Mangione faces life in prison on the state charges, which include second-degree murder in addition to multiple federal charges. And that'll do it for a raspy AM update. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm Megyn Kelly. Join me back here for the MK Show. We have news to break. Let's see if I can actually do it. Live on SiriusXM's The Megyn Kelly Channel, 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms. The Democrats have stumbled upon their alleged illegal order, and they're thrilled. They're so excited. What they're saying is that on one of those Venezuelan drug boat strikes, we struck the boat, that there were 2 survivors, drug dealers, driving the boat or on the boat, who were then clinging to the remnants of the boat, and that on Pete Hegseth's order, they then dropped a second bomb to take out the 2 survivors, and then 2 more bombs to sink the boat, because I guess we want no remnants of the boat whatsoever. And Trump was asked about this on Air Force One, and Trump denied that Pete had done it. He actually said, Pete told me that he hasn't done it, that he did not agree to that. And now we've had 2 inquiries opened in Republican-controlled bodies of Congress, the House and the Senate. So the Republicans, or at least making a show of seeming interested in whether this happened, because many military experts have said they don't see how this could be legal, like that you're not allowed, they say, and this is still under investigation about what happened, but if what I just said is true, and that's an if, that it would be clearly illegal because you're not allowed to kill people who survive an initial strike and who are, even if they're enemy combatants, kind of hanging on, or in this case, possibly literally hanging on for dear life. Your thoughts on it?
Well, I contain multitudes on this. First of all, I'm a big fan of stopping the invasion of drugs into the United States. And I think our children and our grandchildren are going to be so confused when they read in the history books that we had presidents who did nothing about it and just sat back and let people send drugs into the country that killed people and hurt productivity and just all the scourge of things that drugs do. So I'm a big fan of anything that addresses that, number one. Number two, I think President Trump has proven that if you use force aggressively and you use it in a way that minimizes or doesn't cause any loss of American life, that it can be a great deterrent. We saw that, at least potentially with Iran. We've seen it in other cases, and we're seeing it here. So people who say, well, they're not interdicting all the drugs, they're just getting a few boats. No, they're sending a message to people whose families and individuals are going to be more reluctant to go to the high seas with drugs destined for the United States or elsewhere. So I don't want to be misunderstood. I think those two things are good. But I'm also old-fashioned about two things, and I think they're really fundamental to what America's about. Number one, I don't think the President of the United States should kill people indiscriminately, or our forces should kill people indiscriminately in violation of law and American tradition. And that may be what's happened here in this particular case, but it's clearly the case in general. And I think there's been insufficient debate about it and insufficient scrutiny about it. And number two, super old-fashioned and kind of diluted. I think Congress is a co-equal branch, and in some cases a superior branch, when it comes to the declaration of war. And I think no American, whatever you call your politics, no American should be complacent about presidents. All the Cold War presidents have done this, using their power and disregarding Congress's role in declaring war. And I think that's what's happened here too. And I think that's, at a minimum, should be examined.
Well, that touches on an interesting dynamic that's popping up more and more in the press about whether there's some group of Republicans that are dejected and demoralized on Capitol Hill right now, Mark, because they feel like a rubber stamp to Trump. They feel like they can't challenge him or they're going to get primaried and chased out of Congress, MTG style. And so they do feel like they've ceded their constitutional authority because they're all so afraid of the 800-pound gorilla. Now, is that an actual thing right now, or is that just a leftist media fever dream?
No, it's an actual thing. It's not based on, talking to Democrats or talking to Don Bacon or Tom Massey. They're Trump loyalists who are unhappy. Now, some of them are unhappy because of principle. And you don't see, as we did over the weekend normally in the Trump era, you don't see the Republican chairs of the applicable committees in the House and Senate saying this needs to be investigated and saying it in a bipartisan way with the Democratic ranking members. And they're doing that because they are troubled by this on principle. Most of the unhappiness amongst Republicans, again, not a Democratic or media creation, is concern about the midterms. Concern that they're going to lose the House majority because of the economy and a feeling that the White House is insufficiently moving to address what voters are concerned about, particularly how much things cost. So those are two different areas of unhappiness, one principle, one pure politics. And again, I think the political one is probably, if you could quantify unhappiness, probably a greater source right now amongst Republicans.
Right, because we were talking about this a little on the tour, that it's in a way it's so much more fun to be in the opposition, and just like lay criticisms on the people in power. But then when your team is in power and there's infighting and there's all sorts of articles every day about how terrible they are, I know it's from mostly the mainstream, which hates Trump and hates everybody in the Trump administration, but it's aggravating and it's irritating. And it can be kind of a downer. And I feel like the Republican Party is going through that right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of three main areas, right? One is about dealing with the economy, this word that the president doesn't much like, affordability. But these are tough problems. The cost of housing, the cost of food, the cost of energy. These are tough issues for any president to deal with. So that's one source of anxiety and infighting. Two is there's some cabinet members like Pete Hegseth, like Kash Patel, head of the FBI, and like Kristi Noem, who have now had to face multiple stories that are super negative about their stewardships that, again, are not from the deep state. They're not from Democrats. They're some cases published in the legacy media, but not always. So today, for instance, New York Post has a story about Kash Patel by Miranda Devine.
I saw it. We should talk about it. It's
that's
devastating
piece. And again, you got to consider the source. Miranda's a great reporter and writer and columnist. She's not writing a negative story based on the deep state sources. She's just not.
That's what concerns me. She's so good.
So that's number two is you've got some cabinet members. And then the president's poll numbers just aren't good. And again, that's not the liberal media. It's not fake polls. Every poll, including private Republican polls, show it's a snapshot of where we are. It doesn't mean they'll be bad next year. It doesn't mean he can't turn things around. But his poll numbers are really bad right now. And that just always causes tension.
The one that just hit is from Gallup, which is, the mother of all polls. Forgive me, I'm having a cough drop. But that has approval rating down to 36, a new second term low. Keep going.
Yeah, and amongst independents, I think in that poll it's 25. And again, this is not liberal. It's not anti-Trump. If his numbers are that bad at the midterms, they'll lose the House. They might lose the Senate. So that just causes anxiety. And this White House has done a very good job of not just making Republicans in Congress afraid of them, although they're good at that, but making them feel they're being communicated with. And right now, they're claiming they don't feel that way. The White House takes issue with that and says they're communicating all the time, and it's just an excuse to rail against the White House. But this is not a great time right now for the president's political team. But there's an interval here to improve things. But at the moment, there are these sources of tension, and when you see somebody like Miranda Devine write a piece like that about Kash Patel, who's the ultra MAGA loyalist, it just makes everybody think, like a horror movie, like the villain or the enemy or whatever you want to describe it. They're in the house. They're not outside the house. They're in the house.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious, too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips, too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
It's funny because even though we're friends and I adore you and your beautiful wife, Lee, I actually had never, I heard you on Doug's show, my husband, Doug Brunt, and his show Dedicated, but I had never read the actual commendation when you were awarded the Silver Star. And I'm so impressed by people who have been awarded like the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, all of that. It's like, it just really speaks to an extraordinary character. But you not only did 5 combat tours, 5 in Iraq and Afghanistan, but were awarded the Silver Star, the Bronze Star for Valor, and the Purple Heart, the Silver Star being the 3rd highest military combat decoration. I'm going to read some of this, but let me just say, this is always kind of an interesting experiment. How do you describe the reason you were awarded the Silver Star?
Oh, I mean, one of the things that's sort of tricky about these awards is you get awarded for something that is probably, the worst day of your life. They don't hand out those medals when everything goes right on a mission. And oftentimes it is the leader of the unit who is awarded for what everyone else in the unit does. So I was a platoon commander, a young platoon commander in Fallujah when the events occurred in my Silver Star citation. And a lot of it involved a moment when my platoon we were all surrounded in a house together and how we got out of that house. And then another moment included some wounded Marines who we got out of the line of fire. So those are the events mentioned in the citation. But those awards are tricky. You read Medal of Honor citations, and those are not happy days that you're reading about.
Well, you are, of course, as I knew you would be, too humble to actually talk about what you did, but I am going to tell the audience some of it. Excuse me. Quote, during a ferocious enemy counterattack in the insurgent stronghold of Fallujah, with complete disregard for his own safety, Second Lieutenant Ackerman twice exposed himself to vicious enemy fire as he pulled wounded Marines out of the open into shelter. When the amphibious tractors sent to evacuate his wounded men could not locate his position, he once again left the safety of his covered position and rushed through a gauntlet of deadly enemy fire to personally direct the amphibious tractors toward his wounded Marines. On 11 November, as the battle continued, Second Lieutenant Ackerman recognized the exposed position of his Marines on the rooftops and ordered them to seek cover in the buildings below. Shortly afterward, he personally assumed the uncovered rooftop position, prompting a hail of deadly fire from the enemy. With rounds impacting all around him, he coolly employed an M240G machine gun to mark targets for supporting tanks with devastating effects on the enemy. Throughout the battle, and despite his own painful shrapnel wounds, he simultaneously directed tank fires, coordinated 4 separate medical evacuations, and continually attacked with his platoon directly into the heart of the enemy with extreme tenacity. I love this. I love that I'm actually just first hearing this in-depth description of you after having known you for a couple of years. God bless you. Thank you right off the bat for your service. And then you went on to become a writer. So you've been writing books both about the military. So you did 5 combat tours. You were in Iraq. You were in Afghanistan. You were in the CIA. And yet somehow through all of this, you maintained a sense of fashion, which is a fun thing about you. Straight man, married to a gorgeous, brilliant writer who's also extremely talented, Lee Carpenter. But how does like a CIA, Marine, Fallujah, Silver Star earning guy like you, not to mention CIA, wind up so fashionable and straight?
Well, I don't really consider myself some grand fashionista, Megan. I guess I do believe in, being intentional about everything that you do in life. And I actually think that's something that I learned in the Marines. Like, you wake up every day and you make decisions, right? You make decisions if you're going to like put on a pair of sweatpants, or maybe like, put on some khakis or some nice jeans or something to that effect. So I believe in living with intention. And I think if, you have intention that gives you a direction, it's how you achieve goals. So, I'm coming on your show. I could wear a t-shirt, or I could have wore my blazer. You know what I mean? Might as well wear my blazer.
Yeah.
So I don't consider myself a fashionista. I definitely consider myself someone who tries to pay attention to the small things and live life with intention.
And the follow-up is naturally, when are you taking Doug Brunt shopping? When is that happening?
Anytime.
This needs to happen ASAP. Christmas is coming. I'm always very generous. I really, really would love Doug to get some Elliot Ackerman approved looks.
We can back channels for Doug.
Okay. So let me ask you about some of the stuff in the news, and then we'll talk about your columns, because I really love what you're doing at the Free Press. This guy who was part of this same force that you were part of, the Zero Unit, you didn't know him, but he was part of the same unit, who now shot these 2 National Guard members, killing one of them. Good news on the surviving National Guard member who we hear today has wiggled his toes and may have wiggled his hand or may have given a thumbs up. So that's encouraging. You wrote an interesting piece about this guy too, suggesting, look, this was not a good one. He was vetted, but we don't throw away all of the Afghani nationals we took after 2021 just because this guy was bad. And right now, I think most people are in the mindset of, yes, we do. Like, we're not taking any chances. They don't share our culture. One false start, they're all out of here. You make a compelling case that, not so fast. Explain.
Well, when I worked in the Zero units, our mission was, we went after very high level Taliban and Al-Qaeda leadership. I mean, I remember the first day I showed up on the Zero unit, literally the first night working with that unit, I went after a top 10 Al-Qaeda target, a very bad guy in the Korangal Valley. And standing next to me on that mission, it was basically, there were like 3 Americans and 250 Afghans. And we got that guy that night. And we worked, longtime members of SEAL Team 6, the U.S. Army Rangers. And what happened in DC is inexcusable, completely unacceptable. And I understand for most Americans, it's sort of an abstraction. They have no idea what the zero units are, and suddenly they're in the headlines, and that can be scary. So, but from someone who's spent time in those units, I'll tell you, my war buddies, many of them are Afghans, and we did everything that I did with, the Marines you mentioned in that citation. I mean, we fought together, we bled beside one another, and many of those Afghans died, and they died not because they wanted to live in a backward-facing Afghanistan that included practices like, Bachabazi and the Chai Boys, which I listened to your previous segment. But they wanted to live in an Afghanistan that's forward-looking and different. And that didn't work. So does that mean we should open the floodgates to every single person in Afghanistan who wants to come here? No, I wouldn't argue that. But I think when you look at a number of these members of the zero units, and some of whom are already U.S. citizens and in this country, contributing to this country, let's not make the mistake of being completely categorical in our thinking, because that's not what we've done historically as a nation. Listen, my people came here more than 100 years ago from Ukraine, and we were basically shuttle Jews. And when we came off the boat, and I have the photos in my family, we did not look very American by 1900 standards. So I just think, there's a real conversation going on in this country about immigration. I think it's a worthy conversation. Administration is administration. It does not seem like this is an issue that we've gotten right. But I'll tell you right now, there are a bunch of Afghans who fought long and hard against our enemies that I know personally, who are afraid right now to be in America. And, I just think as a people, we are typically a generous and a welcoming people. We are also, a reasonable people. So I'm not making an argument for some categorical reception of everyone who wants to leave Afghanistan. For a lot of these people, folks who fought in the zero units, folks who fought in other units, who bled for American principles, I'd encourage all of us to just take a beat before we make big sweeping statements about entire groups.
Fair enough. It's good to get the other side, because when something like this happens, I think many of us feel like just get them out. We got enough problems of our own. We don't have to inherit others. But you and other service members I know have pointed out, no, some of these guys actually really were critical to the fight and to saving American lives. And it's not that simple to just say, now get out. We owe them more than that. And it's not all of them, but it's a fair amount of them. So we got to be careful. If we didn't do the screening on the way in, we definitely need to do the screening before we send them out. Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
You read this Washington Post report that hit on Friday, the headline of which is, hold on, Hegseth order on first Caribbean boat strike. Officials say, kill them all. Yeah. The subhead, As two men clung to a stricken, burning ship targeted by SEAL Team 6, the Joint Special Operations Commander followed the Defense Secretary's order to leave no survivors. Now we have the New York Times weighing in, saying basically that this was wrong, that there was one order by Pete Hegseth. It was before the mission and said, take out these boats. And there was no order saying kill them all.
Right.
But he wanted these boats destroyed. And that there was no subsequent communication between Pete Hegseth and the admiral who was on scene making the calls, saying, kill those survivors who were clinging for life to this partially destroyed boat. That is not what happened, according to 5 sources in the New York Times. We'll see what the Washington Post does. But you, before you even knew about the New York Times reporting, were saying there are enough holes in that WAPO report to drive a truck through. I do not trust this, and I actually don't think any war crime has been stated. Why?
So there's just so much speculation that's going on. So we don't know. It was 2 anonymous sources who were reporting, the quote from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And we don't know for sure. Well, first of all, they're anonymous reports, anonymous sources. So there is that. But even the quote from the story, it's not clear whether this was a direct quote from, Pete Hegseth saying "kill everybody," the way that it's worded in the Washington Post story, or whether the anonymous sources are basically paraphrasing what Secretary of War told to whoever the audience was. And so that was the first element that that I'm concerned about. And then even if, let's say, it was directly before the mission and the Secretary of War directs whatever the commander is involved to kill everybody, that still isn't necessarily in order to take no prisoners, right? And so we are trained that if somebody is out of the fight due to sickness, illness, injury, or detention, in this case, shipwreck, that we don't continue the attack. And so if troops are given an order to kill everybody, you can reasonably interpret that to be kill all the enemy, attack the enemy. But at the same time, if you do end up encountering someone who is out of the fight, in this case due to shipwreck, then you don't attack them.
Exactly. So what the New York Times is reporting today, it hit last night, is that, again, 5 U.S. officials who spoke separately on the condition of anonymity said Mr. Hegseth, ahead of the September 2nd attack, ordered a strike that would kill the people on board the boat and destroy the vessel and its purported cargo of drugs, which would be a standard order.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't order these boats destroyed and not expect the people on board are going to die. You just take them out, take out the boat, take out the drug cargo on board. And that was it. Exactly. Not what the Washington Post reported, which was as these 2 survivors are clinging there, Pete Hegseth called up and said, take them out.
Right.
That's what the Washington Post went with. It's what NPR is going with still today, even in the wake of late night's New York Times drop.
Yeah, and it's just completely speculative. And, I understand the need to rely on anonymous sources at times when we're reporting, stories, especially when we're dealing with the government. But we still need to assess, we need to engage in a bit of media literacy and say, okay, well, these anonymous sources are saying that Pete Hegseth said this. And there's just so much, ambiguity there, which, ambiguity is fine. We're going to have that in reporting, but then to take that and run with it and essentially accuse the sitting Secretary of War of being a war criminal based on, this basically double hearsay that's being reported from anonymous sources is just, it doesn't make any rational sense.
Well, and on top of everything, so now you tell me, let's deal with what we believe is the reality here. Because WAPO suggested that Hegseth gave a spoken order, saying, kill them all, kill everyone who is still in that water. Now we believe that's not true, that the Washington Post had that wrong. So let's deal with what we believe actually happened. Pete gave the okay for the mission, take out the boat, strike it, everybody on board is going to die, and take out the cargo. Then they dropped their first strike.
Right.
And the boat was, according to the administration's critics, they say it was destroyed. excuse me, it was destroyed. And you have these two clinging to life. And the rules of law prohibit you from striking them. Now let's talk about the admiral, because the admiral, this guy Mitch, forgive me, can't find his last name in front of me. He did say, Bradley, let's have a second strike.
Right.
He is the one who said, we need a second strike. But that too is not a war crime, because you point out in your piece the difference between destroying a boat and damaging a boat.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So assuming that the boat itself originally is a military objective. So by definition, in the law of armed conflict, this is something that's by its nature, location, purpose, or use, in this case, purpose, makes an effective contribution to military action such that, capturing it or destroying it gives a definite military advantage, concrete direct military advantage under the circumstances ruling at the time. So that's the standard. That's what we apply in practice. That's what we're trained on. And so the boats, to begin with, assuming that law of armed conflict applies, and there's a lot of discussion about whether it should or shouldn't, and that's something we can get into. But for purposes of the operators who are involved in this strike, they are applying the law of armed conflict because they're told that they're in an armed conflict. So, this boat originally qualifies then as a military objective by definition that I just suggested, and it will no longer be a military objective if it is completely destroyed, right? So if under the circumstances no longer by its use makes an effective contribution. And even with the facts that the Washington Post it reports in that initial story, there's an indication to me, at least when I read this, that the commander involved must have assessed that it's still qualified, to use the legal term, still qualified as a military objective, because he suggested that it could still radio for assistance, and another boat could come and capture, regain control of the cargo, and then continue mission. Almost said Charlie Mike, because that's what we call it in the military. Continue mission. And so if that's the case, then it's my impression from reading that is that the commander must have assessed that this boat still qualifies as a military objective such that it can still be attacked, which would also mean, incidentally, that the personnel that are on board are not shipwrecked, because, and if they were shipwrecked, let's call them hors de combat, so out of the fight due to the shipwreck. So we should not attack them in that case. But if the vessel that they're on still qualifies as a military objective, then they're not, but they're by definition, they're not shipwrecked. And, the commander could order subsequent strikes to finish the mission, to complete the mission, to ensure that the boat is no longer serviceable, that no longer is a military objective.
So if the boat is not destroyed and the mission is to destroy it, and you have two survivors who are floating on the boat or holding onto the boat in the water, it's fair game. They're going to go if the mission is take out that boat.
That's right. So this is a difference between whether the boat was disabled or destroyed. And so if it's destroyed, we can think of, pieces of boat floating around in the water, and maybe survivors with a life vest on or clinging to it or whatever. Like, that's a destroyed boat. And if that's the case, then there would be no reason to reattack it. But if the boat is disabled, and again, by the initial report from the Washington Post, it's what it sounds to me like the commander involved assessed that the boat was disabled rather than destroyed, then it still qualifies then by legal definition, by the law of armed conflict, as a military objective, such that it can be it can be attacked until
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
The mission is destroy it.
Yeah.
You've only disabled it,
Right.
so you need a second strike to destroy it. That's what this Admiral Bradley saw and did. And those two guys who survived the initial blast were taken down in the second strike. And now, not only did we have the suggestion that it's possible the two survivors might have been able to coordinate with other narco-terrorists, we actually, in the New York Times report, have, this is on the record now, one of the officials that spoke to the Times is quoted as saying the U.S. military intercepted radio communications from one of the survivors to what the official said were narco traffickers.
Right.
I mean, now that's as clear cut as it comes. Any military commander would order those guys taken out.
Absolutely, because at that point, if that's the intelligence that they have, at that point, it absolutely still does qualify. Because again, by definition, an object that by its use makes an effective contribution to military action. And so, so it was it was kind of implied by the way that the Washington Post reported it that, the commander believed that they could radio for assistance and have someone come and get the cargo and continue with the mission. But with with going on record now, establishing on the record that, yes, there was, in fact, a radio transmission that was intercepted, then, that basically supports the conclusion that that's exactly what the commander believed at the time. And, the commander ordered subsequent strikes to destroy the boat because it wasn't destroyed to begin with.
This is so amazing to me. This all makes perfect sense. It's a left-wing, Trump-hating narrative that we have these military commanders who are just these rogue agents who have thrown caution to the wind, who are just out there for bloodlust, trying to take down anybody that they see in the seas, as opposed to rational, thoughtful, considered leaders who understand the rules of military combat a lot better than the Washington Post. Yeah. Or some armchair pundits who want to jump all over them. And it also seemed clear in the way the military was very careful in its wording about this. You had Trump saying, Hegseth told me he did not give that second order, that he did not give a verbal command to kill all the people. And they're still denying that. And then Hegseth sent out a tweet saying, I stand behind Admiral Bradley. He's done nothing wrong, which seemed to be a way of saying, here's the guy who gave the order, but he did nothing wrong. It was a way of sort of clarifying it wasn't me, and now we know it wasn't him. But we also want to find out whether Admiral Bradley did anything wrong, and the answer is no. He had a partially destroyed ship from which, according to this one official to the Times, the radio comms were still possible, and one of the survivors was using them to call in backup. Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious, too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips, too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
My dear friend is the mother of Amelia's best friend at NYU. And so my friend Nancy texted me the video of Amelia talking about this on TikTok. She went on TikTok immediately and was upset. I'm like, what is this? She said, it just happened. This is outrageous. I'm like, this is outrageous. I said, is she on X? I'm not personally on TikTok. Our show's on TikTok, but I'm not personally on there. And she's like, she's not. I'm like, tell her to get on X. So she went over, she created an account on X and tweeted the video. She has a new account. I retweeted it, calling attention to it, saying we need help identifying this guy. And can I tell you what happened? The X-Army went to work. I tagged the NYPD and the NYPD police chief, and then some other people I know who are very connected to NYPD retweeted it and added other CCs who they knew would pay attention. And this thing started to go viral online on Monday. And guess what? Police confirmed late yesterday the arrest of 45-year-old James Rizzo, who has been charged with persistent sexual abuse, forcible touching, and assault. And now we're learning even more about this guy's deeply disturbing history. 16 prior arrests, a 2-year sentence for persistent sexual abuse, and even a 1997 murder charge. Amelia Lewis joins me now. And also, we've brought in Summer Armstrong, who is my family friend, and also her mother's my dear, dear friend, who helped obtain the footage of Amelia's attack, both NYU students. And Summer was also assaulted herself in New York last May. Gals, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Oh my God. I'm like, this is like a horrifying story, but it's also kind of uplifting in its own way. So I'm going to start with you, Amelia. So you're walking down the street on Monday morning. This is the first day back from Thanksgiving. You're in a good mood, I assume, as you've been with your family. And how did you experience, we'll show the video, but how did you experience this attack?
Yeah, as you said, it was Monday morning, about 9:20 a.m. I was crossing the street, walking up south of Broadway, right by Waverly Place. And in broad daylight, I felt a extremely painful and hard whack to my butt. And then I turned around and was shocked to see a middle-aged man. And he proceeded to grab my hair and violently and forcefully throw me to the ground.
Were you totally shocked? Like did you have any idea you were in danger as you were walking? I
had no idea. As you can see in the clip that you're going to show, he targets me and follows me from behind. So this is no right way I could have seen it.
Okay, so just for the listening audience, we're seeing a street cam and people are walking. Now here comes Amelia. She circled herself helpfully on this video. She's got her jeans on. She's walking. She's got his headphones on. There's a man coming up. He's running to catch up with her. He wails her from behind. She turns around in shock, and then you can see her go down. You see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 women on the sidewalk, stunned at what just happened to you. And then like lovely New York women come over to help you, which is sweet. And I understand there was a man who came to help you too. So what happened? Where did he hit you, Amelia?
So he initially first hit me on the left side of my butt, extremely hard. And then after that, it's when he pulled my hair to the ground.
After that, say it again?
He pulled my hair to the ground.
Oh, and then just ran?
Ran.
So did you get a good look at him?
I only got a look at him for like a quick second. I only could see that he had a beard and long hair, and I could tell that he was a white, older male. But after that, he threw me to the ground, and in shock, I just kind of laid there for a bit.
Okay. And what happened with the passersby?
So I could tell that they were also in shock. They kind of stood there and stared at me for a second, but after a bit, they came and lifted me off the ground and kept asking, like, are you okay? Are you okay? They asked if I knew this man, which I said I do not. And then later on, a man helped me call 911.
And what made you go on TikTok shortly thereafter and post your reaction?
I really wanted to bring awareness to the stuff that has been happening to young women in New York City. I've heard so many stories, and on my TikTok, I say, I never thought that this would happen to me, but it's really sad. This is something that happens all the time in New York, and I really want to make sure and use my voice to raise awareness and help other girls stay protected, and also help other girls that have maybe gone through the same experience as I.
Because this has been happening over and over and over to young women in New York. The stories are legion. They go on, and you were aware of that.
Yes. I mean, the news on TikTok, a woman was just thrown with gasoline and set on fire. The stories are insane, and it's horrific.
Yeah. So this isn't like, when you go to NYU, your campus is New York City. So it's not like you're not on campus exactly. It's a public street, but you were on your way to class. And so it's a place where you would expect to be safe. So you decide, after this happens, you did decide to call the cops, to your credit, because a lot of women would not have done that.
Yes, exactly. I first was in shock and didn't know what to do. But after the man approached me holding his phone with 911, I decided to call the cops just because I wanted to report this. And after I did tell the cops, I decided to also let NYU security know so they could alert other students around campus to let them know that this man is going around doing this to other women.
And what were your hopes that the NYPD was actually going to hunt down this man and find him at that point?
I had high hopes. They were very understanding and kind, and they were also told me that they were already aware of the man and the blue towel around his neck running around the city and getting this guy. But I definitely think because of your platform and also X, it helped really put pressure on them to really find this guy and work quickly. So even though I had hoped that they would find this guy, I really don't know if this would get as much attention as it did if it wasn't for X and also for Summer going and getting the footage.
So that's key, because even if I had posted it to X and retweeted your tearful testimonial, it would have been different without the actual video of the assault. And that's where Summer comes in. Summer, you and Amelia are dear friends. What made you think to go to the store to say, do you have video of this?
I mean, right when I got Amelia's text, I was in class and I got a horrible sinking gut feeling because this has also happened to me. And I was lucky enough to have footage in my case. Unfortunately, my assailant was not caught, but I knew that footage is key in this, and I knew that it was in front of stores. And so my first thought was, we need to get this footage and we need to catch this guy.
So was it a liquor store you got it from, whose camera captured it?
Yeah, Warehouse Wine and Spirits on Broadway.
Did you go there? Did you just call there? How did you get it?
I walked in, I was on FaceTime with Amelia, and I just said, my friend was assaulted. Please, can you go through this time frame of footage and see if you have it? Because I'm pretty sure you guys have a camera facing. And lo and behold, they found it.
Oh my God. And it's so clear. It's great
awesome
footage. And on top of it being so clear, it is the reason I think you actually got results in this case. If I had just retweeted Amelia's testimonial, I really don't think this would have drawn as much attention. It's the fact that we can see the crime. It's so infuriating. You want to punch this guy in the face. Every man on X was resolved to help you at this point, Amelia, having seen what he did to you. And everybody knows it's not like, forgive me, but like some hysterical college student saying something that may not have happened, or she may be exaggerating. They can see for themselves this is an assault. It really was a sexual assault, which is what this guy has an alleged long history of doing. Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
We were told during the COVID vaccine mania, and I believe that you were very attuned to this. I think I don't know why.
I have a lot to say about COVID.
You mentioned Vinay Prasad. Yeah. But an extraordinary piece of reporting has just come out about the COVID vaccine trials and children. Alex Berenson reported this, and I have been reliably informed that we are fine to go with this reporting and that this will be borne out in the coming days. His headline is, and it was an exclusive to him, the FDA may add a strict black box warning on the mRNA COVID shots for kids and teens, millions of whom have already been given this thing, a black box warning. He reports the FDA may soon place this warning on the vaccines to alert physicians and parents of their link to childhood deaths. This is the strictest an agency can impose, this kind of warning. It's generally the last step they take before forcing a manufacturer to stop selling it. They're also considering an alternative, forcing Moderna and Pfizer to stop selling them to kids and teens, period. The potential move, he reports, follows the FDA's report on Friday that its reviewers had found COVID mRNA jabs killed at least 10 children and adolescents, and likely many more. He said they'd asked the FDA for comment, waiting to hear back. My sources tell me this is safe reporting. This actually is under consideration, and we're going to hear a report confirming this within days from the highest levels. This is an outrage, Chamath. This was forced on us. Every school, including my own, they were expelling boys who would not take the vaccine once they hit 16 and so on. This is downright dangerous, and it was sold to us by the Fauci, Biden, Collins administration under Joe Biden that refused to consider actual scientists like Vinay Prasad, who led this. He's leading this within FDA, who was an independent physician at Johns Hopkins at the time. And he was saying this at the time, saying these vaccines are causing deadly myocarditis in kids and teens. And he was scoffed at. He was marginalized like so many others and tried to dismiss as fringe. And now, thank God, under Trump and Marty McCary, he's been elevated to an important position. Your thoughts on it?
COVID is probably the most important historical moment of the last 50 years for the world. And it needs to be understood, I think, in three really important and critical things for the success and the future of the United States. The first is that we did not allow robust thinking and dissenting voices during that period, all the way up to being able to call places like Facebook and places like Twitter and telling them, places like Google, and telling them, take this down, or, put a warning on this, deboost that. That's the effective equivalent of a black box label for content. If you're not going to create even reasonable disclaimers and just suppress information, what the average person will do is come to a conclusion based on what is available to them. But if what is available to them is a small sliver of the total groupthink or of the total thought, you're going to get very narrow opinions. And it allowed a small group of people to control the narrative and then to make decisions. That is extremely dangerous in a democracy. So that's the first thing that we learned in COVID that has to change. So within that, I think we have to go and uncover all of the true underlying medical research and put it out into the light. The Great Barrington Declaration that Jay Bhattacharya wrote caused him to essentially get defenestrated from Stanford. And yet he turned out to be right as well. There are umpteen examples where very credible scientists were saying, let's just slow down here and think about this. And they were not allowed to say that. And that content was essentially suppressed. So rational, independent thinking people like you and me and your listeners could not come to our own conclusion. So that's number one. The second thing is that what we learned in COVID is, hold on a second, this globalist monoculture has made us super fragile. If somebody in some remote part of the world decides that they don't like what we're doing or saying, they can shut things off, and all of a sudden these supply chains go dark and our entire economy folds in on itself. That cannot be how a robust, resilient country like the United States thrives for the next 250 years, like we have in the last 250. So that was the second big thing. And then the third thing, which we still are not putting our finger on, is we have had a huge setback to kids. It created an enormous deficit from learning and from socialization. And I can speak personally about this myself. With 5 kids all sheltering in place for that period of time, when I look at the impacts, it's the children at that age that were 6, 7, and 8 who are today 11, 12, 13, and 14, of which I have 2 actually. My gosh, they really took a step backwards in their ability to learn, in their ability to engage. And I don't think we're doing the best for these children who are the future of our country in the next 20 or 30 years. So those 3 things in COVID, frankly, caused me extreme frustration. The lack of free speech and democracy, the lack of resiliency in the United States economy that we had created because we just outsourced everything to Davos and their ilk, and then the impact of our kids that we are still not addressing. I think that all of that needs to get put on display, and we need to be extremely honest about it. The problem that Biden did at the end, which I thought was extremely offensive, was by pre-pardoning all these folks, we essentially allow this get out of jail free card where you can't even interrogate the truth. So you can't even have an accounting for the future. You know, look, we have had huge mistakes in the past in the United States, but we've been able to have commissions. Those commissions can at a minimum write reports. Those reports can then be taken by think tanks. We may not agree with this process, but at least at a minimum, there is a way for good, sensible policy to then enter the water table. None of that will be possible here because so much of it is suppressed, or because we've already taken all of this stuff off the table. We can never even ask the questions. That is really wrong.
Here's the other problem. The media. They were
complicit.
Totally complicit.
Totally complicit.
Right? Totally complicit. They went along with it. Not everyone. I mean, independent media in our lane, All In and yours truly and Tucker and many others were speaking up against the lies that we were being told, in particular when it came to children. But let me just give you one example, all right? When this was happening, I was listening to Dr. Vinay Prasad. I had never heard of him, but I was very attuned, thanks to Brett Weinstein and many others I do listen to, that there was a problem with these COVID vaccines, especially when it came to kids. And it led me to Dr. Vinay Prasad. I listened to his podcast all the time. And he's a doctor, and he was talking real truths about the COVID vaccines and about myocarditis and pericarditis, in particular in teenage boys, but teenage girls too, and in kids. And now he's at FDA, and now Alex Berenson reporting, again, we expect this to break from the highest level soon, reporting that Dr. Vinay Prasad wrote a 6-page note to staffers saying the real number of children and teenagers killed by the mRNA vaccines is likely much higher than 10 children. After looking at 96 deaths of kids aged 7 to 16, FDA reviewers found 10, quote, died after and because of receiving the COVID-19 vaccination. But that depends on voluntary reporting and is almost certainly a significant underestimate, Prasad wrote. In addition, the FDA reviewers excluded cases where records were ambiguous. And Berenson reports that one of these children died during the Moderna vaccine trial. And what they did with that kid was just to exclude him. They excluded him. We covered a case like this where we had on a guy who was vaccine injured. He was a mountain biker. He was vaccine injured during the whole process. And they excluded him from the trial. Or was it him and his wife? Or his wife, I had two on. In any event, they just wrote him out of the trial. So they didn't have to count him. So this is what was being done. And then those vaccines were made mandatory for our children. I want to say one note to scared parents right now. The information seems to be that, God forbid this thing were going to cause a death, it would have happened. Like it wouldn't be now 4 years later. Like yes, of course, get your child checked. For sure. You should, for sure I'd be having my kid checked if they had a vaccine. But even without the vaccine, if they had COVID, get an EKG, get an echocardiogram. That's actually not too expensive. You can get your doctor to order it. And just check out their heart. That's all you need to do. But the real danger period is right after you get the vaccine. So don't worry if your child had the vaccine and is still fine. You likely avoided it. I don't want to scare people. Go ahead.
The one great thing is, I know Marty and I know Bobby and Jay. These are three exceptional Americans, and they are bulldogs for the truth. And so I suspect that if this comes to pass and there is a black box label, it's because they've done some pretty thoughtful research and they've rerun the data and they've, included the thing is that, you can exclude data, but that data is written down somewhere. So to the extent that they got their hands on this and was able to see it and they decide that the black box label is the right way to go, I really trust those three to do the right thing. The other thing that I'll say is that it would be really incredible over time where we can release some of this data in an anonymized way so that some of these new AI models could rerun some of these statistical analyses just to make sure that all the math was right. I think that's probably something that should happen anyways. That's something that the FDA could do in partnership with Google and Anthropic and OpenAI and Grok as an example. But I think it would give people a lot more certainty that the math and the analysis and the conclusions are defensible, not just in the eyes of the companies who have an economic incentive to get to a yes, but AI models who are trained to just be extremely truthful. And I think that could be a very helpful new tool in the arsenal of how we as a community, like, let's be honest, Megyn, I mean, you and I have both been prescribed drugs. It's really hard to understand what's going on. I just assumed that everything is done correctly. I remember that when I once said on the All In podcast, are you allowed to call something a vaccine that is 30 or 40% efficacious? That's when I got some of the most severe pushback ever, just to even ask that question, because when I think vaccine, when I get a vaccine, I'm protected for life. That's what I just kind of assumed. And so when I give my kids vaccines, that's what I'm thinking as well. But if I'm taking something that's 30 or 40% efficacious, it doesn't seem like a vaccine. It seems like a best efforts attempt. And that's when, at some point I stopped taking the flu vaccine because of that, because it's not really a vaccine. It's, my doctor tells me, 30 or 40% of the time it'll help you. 60% of the time you're on your own. And I wasn't even allowed to ask that question on air.
Yep. Well, so the media thing, back in, it was October 19th, 2022, just to walk down memory lane. And I'd been listening to Vinay and others, and I tweeted out the following because the CDC had just added the COVID vaccine to its list of mandatory or, recommended school vaccinations. And I tweeted out the following: a scary number of kids are dying after taking the COVID vax from myocarditis, among other injuries. How dare the CDC add this to its list of school vaccinations? Don't listen. Be very careful with your teenage boys in particular, but girls too. These are not honest brokers. This is dangerous, with an exclamation point. The shitstorm that rained down upon me was massive and ongoing. I'll just give you a couple. The Daily Beast, which is literally wrong about everything all the time, tweeted out, Megyn Kelly's anti-vax lies are a threat to public health. Daily Beast, you fucking got kids killed. You got kids killed. I saved lives. This show saved lives, without question. The Hill, Megyn Kelly faces backlash over COVID tweet. It went on and on. Kara Swisher, Silicon Valley, speaking of Silicon Valley, this was the issue. Not long after this, literally 2 days after this, Vinay Prasad I'd been listening to, literally 2 days after this, my sister died, not of COVID. It was a long story, but she died. And I was supposed to do Kara Swisher's podcast and I had to cancel. So my assistant texted her saying she has a family emergency. She didn't, give up the farm. And Kara Swisher wrote back, oh, I'm sure it's a family emergency and not just she's afraid to come on now, given the storm around her stupid COVID tweets.
I'm really sorry.
And Abby was like too polite to just shove it down her throat and say, actually, her sister's dead. And by the way, when she found out, she wasn't apologetic. She didn't say, oh my God, I'm such an asshole. Sorry for being such a jerk. Anyway, that's what was happening. That was the reaction to that, Chamath.
It's
a huge storm around me telling the truth. Yeah. And I did a whole talking points memo on it the very next day, a whole talking points, giving the examples of what I was talking about, kids who were dying from this. And now we have the FDA finally coming out, about to put a black box warning on this thing, saying it was all true. Where's the media accountability? Where's the apology from The Hill, the Daily Beast, from Kara Swisher? Why won't any of the dishonest brokers come out and say, we're sorry?
I think that what has to happen are a couple of really important things. The first is that places like you, places like All In, whoever is willing to just independently call balls and strikes, we have to find a way of growing and thriving. And I think that while we're doing a good job, I think it's still very fragile for independent media. We're still reliant on large distribution channels like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Google and X. And at any point, if those fall into the wrong hands, or we go back to repressive or regressive regimes around free speech, the ability to talk about an issue, from all angles will disappear. That's what we can fix, which is we have to become economically viable to be independent forever, so that even if all of those places at some point say, hey, you know what, I don't like what you're saying, you can somehow, get access to satellite internet and start broadcasting your own thoughts independent of everybody else. Now, what does that require? I think what that requires is extreme privacy and a monetary system that can be shielded. Now, that's a risk today because I think, there's still a lot of ways in which wrongthink can be punished. And wrongthink ebbs and flows depending on who you are. Like, the European government of wrongthink is very different than what.
Totally right.
Right. And and we've seen this, by the way.
So I've seen it. You guys you get suppressed. Your videos get suppressed. They get lower circulation if you have wrongthink in them. And in my case,
the 3 videos from our summit that were deboosted?
I get ultimately savaged by the media for something else. They make up some fake controversy to try to diminish my voice because they recognize I'm a threat.
Look at one of my best friends and my bestie on the pod, David Sachs. Look at this weekend, this huge trash burger that was written by the New York Times. Complete garbage. Now, and frankly, I talked to David along the way over these months, just seeing how he was dealing with it. And I was so shocked at how patient he was and how forthright he was, because he was like, there's nothing to see here. And it was 5 people over 5 months trying to dig something up. And ultimately, when they found nothing, they tried to write the most hurtful headline, probably with the presumption that maybe most people will just read the headline and move on, and we will inflict the damage we want to see in what is an incredible American.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
Now, you've been writing about how to be a man. And this is an important subject. You are a man. You have children who will be men. And you've been thinking about it, I'm sure, the same way we all been thinking about it, because we're having a crisis with young men in this country. The left calls it toxic masculinity. That's a lie. That's not what's happening here. What I see on the right is sort of a generation of lost boys who have been blamed for everything by the left. And that seeps into their K through 12 education. They hear similar when they go off to college. They don't get into the best colleges anymore because, especially if they're white, they're the last people that college administrators want to see on their campuses. They don't get the jobs that they used to, but they still have the same financial pressures as being head of household and so on. And this can all lead to a depressive cycle, not to mention the influence of the iPhone, gaming, social media, and all the rest of it. So why did you begin this series over at the Free Press?
All sorts of, I don't really consider myself, I'm not really a creature necessarily of the right or the left. I kind of roam around in my opinions, but I'm going to use some of the language that I consider is kind of the language of the left. And so much as the left for a long time has talked about, how marginalized groups, they need to be seen. They need representation. And I really believe that across categories. I think like children in particular, no matter who you are, like you need to have an adult in your life who you can look at and say, I want to be like that person. Or you need teachers in your lives to speak with you with intention about your identity. I think that is all really important for young people. But guess what? That's also important for just sort of, straight young boys who maybe are pretty vanilla in their interests. Like maybe they like just sports and, and action movies. And I think for a while, you know, young people who've been just sort of more traditionally masculine, the only word that is attached to that word masculine is toxic. And we don't talk about all the great things that come with being masculine and how to be a good man. And oh, by the way, if you're a feminist, like there's nothing better for the feminist movement than creating good men. You don't want to inherit a bunch of lost boys who become lost men, because that's bad across categories, not just for those men. So I have an interest in this just as the father of three boys. Is that okay? How do I speak to my boys about the adults they're going to be, and the adults they're going to be men? And for me, it's this idea of just intention, and oftentimes just starting with the small things, like how do you tie a tie? How do you introduce yourself to someone? How do you ask me why do I dress nicely? It's that same thing. It's like making little decisions about how you're going to be in this world, and those little decisions are cumulative, but we haven't been having much of a deliberate conversation with that and speaking or seeing, to use that word, our young boys for a while. So I think the spirit of this is just to like see those young men by offering them little bits of advice. And the series is titled, A Man Should Know, because in my life I had so many people teach me things, and at the end of giving me my lesson, they just like, nah, a man should know how to do that. And that's all I'm saying is, hey, if you're a man, you should know how to do some of these things.
Yeah, like tell a story about your watch.
Oh, sure. So this is this watch of mine. I've had this watch for 20 years. I was on deployment in 2006 with the Marines, and we were in the Mediterranean Sea, and Israel had invaded Lebanon, and we were in charge of evacuating all of the American citizens out of Beirut. And that sounds a lot more exciting than it was. It basically meant we were just sitting on the ships doing circles for a couple of months. And one of my friends on that ship was a fighter pilot. And if you or any of your listeners have met fighter pilots, they're usually pretty reliably watch guys. And he kind of got me into watches and looking at watches. And I was making some money. I was a young single guy, and my pay was tax free. And I had just come from Iraq, actually. And I started thinking, I really wish I'd had a better watch than something that I could kind of pass down and would be a little bit of an heirloom to my kids. So I took my pay from that deployment while we were at sea, and when we pulled into port, we pulled into Dubai, and I went to a mall, and and I bought this watch. It's a nice watch. It's a Rolex Explorer 2, and I've worn this watch on my wrist every day for 20 years.
And what does it do for you?
To me, it's less about the watch. It's just about having something that you carry with you every day, and you imbue it with value, and it's something that can be passed down. So I wore this watch in Afghanistan. I work as a journalist. I've covered the wars in Syria and Ukraine. This watch was on my wrist then. It was on my wrist the day my children were born. It was on my wrist the day that I met my beautiful wife, Lee, and the day we got married. And, in the future, I'll probably, pass this watch down to my son, and then, buy myself another watch. But I think it's about creating meaning in some of the things that we have, and creating traditions. And that's something I think anyone should know how to do, but a man should know how to do, certainly.
Also, there was a piece about, I'm trying to remember whether it was the specific letter writing or thank you writing, one or both, or the combination.
I just wrote a piece last week. It was really about how to say thank you to someone, and sort of little gestures that we can engage in. So my wife and I had some friends over for dinner. This was a couple of years ago, and one of our guests just afterwards sent along a thank you note that he had printed out on a piece of stationery, just talking about the evening and how lovely it was. And I was sort of struck by what a decent gesture that was. And so I started following that practice, and just, instead of sending someone a text after seeing them, or an email, and I'm just writing a follow-up thank you note. And I've just, really been impressed by how meaningful it is, and how meaningful it's been for me when I receive those notes, because there's something that you can hold on to. I save letters. So I think little gestures like that make quite the difference. I mean, and my wife, she's the queen of the thank you note / gift.
She's the queen of the thank you gift. That's why you're never coming over again, because Lee's gifts are so amazing that say thank you. I'm like, I can never live up to this. All I ever do is send a text.
Yeah.
She not only does she send you a gift, she sends it like a really clever gift that she put a lot of thought behind. I'm totally wowed by her.
Yeah. And she's good. And these lessons that I write about, I mean, the column is a man should know, but they're not things that are, just taught by men. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. And the piece on thank you notes is one I largely attribute to things my wife has taught me.
Mm-hmm. So what else should a man know? I mean, you have a challenge in today's day and age of imbuing the toughness of a Marine, but I don't want to say softness, but let's say tenderness of a man that a woman would want to be with, and who can navigate the tricky society that we're in 2020, nearly 2026 America. So, I mean, is that taught by example, or is that a lesson? Is that a chat at the dinner table, balancing those two poles of a man's personality?
Again, I think they're about intention and control. When I served in the Marines, my division commander in Iraq was, General Mad Dog Mattis. And, he famously told the 1st Marine Division that our motto was, no better friend, no worse enemy. And I think, a man should understand how to be gentle, how to be kind, how to be open-minded, but should also know, how to be strong and how to be tough and single-minded when the moment calls for it, and be able to toggle between those two with utter control. So, this series doesn't necessarily go into the deeper philosophy, but it really kind of focuses on just sort of specifics, little ways to be intentional as a man with how you exist in the world and present yourself in the world. So some of the columns we have coming up are, just frankly, how to wear a tuxedo. Who's going to teach you? A lot of people just don't know how to do that. And if the first time you get invited to a black tie event, it's the first time you have to figure out how to put on a tuxedo, maybe that's going to be a little bit awkward for you. So these are just little things, stuff that people taught me that I hope to pass on, not only to my sons, but to just pass on in general to anyone who wants this knowledge.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
The left is now very, very concerned about a president or his Department of War head ordering an illegal death, an illegal killing of someone deemed an enemy combatant. Except they didn't much seem to mind during the Obama era. I was on all the time talking about these strikes that Obama was doing with the drones. I remember O'Reilly and I having many, many debates about this. And hold on, we've got some with Obama bragging about how good he was at killing people. And oh, he told you that in your book too. Yeah. Hold on a second. Where is that soundbite, Debbie? I know that one's not on tape, but the Obama drone strike is. This is where he was Shot 7 is where he was joking about how good he was with the Predator drones at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's a joke, but it's based on reality because he really was taking out not just alleged terrorists, but Americans who had no due process with his drones. Here's the joke, and then we'll get to the bigger news you made with him in your book.
The Jonas brothers are here. They're out there somewhere. Sasha and Malia are huge fans. But boys don't get any ideas. I have 2 words for you. Predator drones. You will never see it coming.
Okay, so they're perfectly willing to yuck it up. I didn't see like a 6th senator video saying, oh, disobey illegal orders in case you get one to take out the Jonas brothers. But with you, Mark, he took that joke and made a very serious comment that showed his real feelings about his use of those drones. And what did he say?
Well, he didn't say it directly to me. He said we reported that he said it to his aides. He said, I guess I'm pretty good at killing people. I think that's the quote in Double Down, the sequel to Game Change. And as you said, he killed at least one American. That's a big difference, right? For the President of the United States, do we owe the same level of due process to people who aren't Americans who the president says we're at? I don't think so. But for an American to get no due process and have his president kill him, that's quite something. Now, again, might have been justified by some moral, situational ethics thing. But as you said, where was the outrage then by the press? I was outraged. I was talking quite a bit about it. But where was the outrage from the media and from Democrats and Republicans who are principled? Like, again, there might be a justification for it, but in this country with our traditions, this should be discussed and debated, and the president should have to justify it rather than just saying, I control the weapons, and now with the drones, even easier. I control these things, and so I'm going to kill whoever I think should be killed. That's just not our tradition. There might be justification for it, and I'm not saying I don't share the goals, but it should be debated and discussed and scrutinized, and there should be disclosure about it. And I would say nothing could be more MAGA than saying we can't have a president who's unfettered in their ability to use our military to do whatever he wants. That's just not the way America is.
Mm-hmm. He said to you, or they quoted in your book, Double Down, 2012, turns out I'm really good at killing people. Didn't know that was going to be a strong suit of mine. Yeah. I mean, wow. It was a 16-year-old. He was an American citizen, killed by a U.S. drone strike in Yemen. He was the son of terrorist Anwar al-Awlaki, and the justification was, wrong place, wrong time. Yeah. Like, too bad. Sorry, not sorry. And look, the problem they have in the Hegseth situation is reportedly, and again, this is a big asterisk because this is Washington Post reporting, that allegedly after this incident on September 2nd, they then changed the policy, the approach to not, quote, double tap if there were survivors on the boats, from the boats now swimming in the water after their boat was blown to smithereens. Yeah. So it would suggest an acknowledgement that having taken out those two on September 2nd was not ideal. I don't know if it's an acknowledgement it was illegal, but it certainly seems to have been a change in policy. And in the law, that's exactly the kind of thing you use against somebody, the change in policy or the change in behavior. Having said all that, Mark, these guys are in no danger whatsoever. If some overzealous, Senate panel leads to a recommendation for charges, the DOJ somehow finds, I don't know, some weird independent streak and decides to indict these guys, or whoever it would be, it might be a military prosecution, President Trump is going to pardon them. These guys have nothing to worry about for this strike.
Well, they don't have anything to worry about, I agree with you, from the point of view of a Justice Department indictment. And I may be wrong about this, but I don't know that the president can pardon people in the court of military justice. And certainly it could impact their careers.
I think he can.
Really? I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example of that.
I think so. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I was reading, among others, Andy McCarthy this morning. Yeah. He was very tough on the president here, very tough on Hegseth. And not at all on his side, but I think he did acknowledge up front that a pardon would be likely and could render it moot.
If you read the Washington Post story carefully, as you did, people should know the Washington Post story leaves room for the notion that the order to kill the last two gentlemen, allegedly, was not a direct order from Hegseth. That Hegseth's order was make sure everybody gets killed, but it's possible, if you read the Post story literally, that it was the commander who said, do the second tap, rather than Hegseth himself.
Well, I mean, I guess that won't necessarily affect anything other than the truth of Hegseth's denial, as espoused by Trump on Air Force One, that Hegseth told me he did not order that. Right. So, I mean, that may get Hegseth off the hook. In any event, it's like, to me, it's kind of annoying to even debate it. I do think our soldiers and, all armed forces should not commit war crimes. Mm-hmm. Definitely on team don't commit a war crime. But I also feel like I object to even the scrutiny of this event because it's all manufactured. It's only being done to retroactively justify this, seditious six and that's what Hegseth is calling them, and their video, which was based on nothing. They're just now digging. It's a fishing expedition, and it does feel a little, Stalin's right-hand man-esque, like, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. That's how it feels to me, so I'm really not that into it, nor do I really care that we're killing the drug boat guys trying to kill my kids and yours right now by bringing their fentanyl to the United States to try to get our kids when they go to college with, some drug in some moment of weakness where they think they're taking a Xanax, like what happened to poor Eric Bolling's child, and instead it's laced with fentanyl. So I really do kind of not only want to see them killed in the water, whether they're on the boat or in the water, but I'd really like to see them suffer. I would like Trump and Hegseth to make it last a long time so that they lose a limb and bleed out a little. Like, I'm really having a difficult time ginning up sympathy for these guys who 10 seconds earlier almost got taken out by the initial bomb, but because they managed to get ejected, a little too soon, had to be taken out in the water. I realize legally it may make a difference, but truly, Mark, this is a tough case to really gin up the sympathies of the American people.
Yeah, like I said, I share the premise that you just raised because I think it's important that we do something to keep our porous border from being flooded with drugs that are killing our people. So if this is in service of that, I think it's something that should be considered. I just think there needs to be more debate because I just don't think it's good for the United States to be violating international law, if that's what happened here, or taking human life under conditions that aren't vetted. Now, I would say every one of these actions has a legal team. And my hope would be that the legal team is signing off on this stuff. So while outside...
That's what Hegseth is saying.
So while outside lawyers may say this is a clear violation, let's find out. Again, declassification without revealing sources and methods and operational details. Let's find out what the legal justification was for it. Because if it can't be justified legally, then it's hard to defend it, even if the mission and the goals are admirable and necessary. But presumably these were signed off on by lawyers. So let's see what they said. Let's see how they justified it. That hasn't been forthcoming. And I do think that would quiet the complaints of at least some who are fair-minded about this.
Yes, and Hegseth says they did have sign-off from lawyers at the top of the DOJ and the military system on these strikes, though his memo's a little ambiguous on, what about the question of the two swimming in the water? Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious, too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips, too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
Here's Walls trying to do damage control on this on Meet the Press. I don't think he understands what that term means. Here he is with Kristen Welker, SOT 19.
Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Certainly, I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy.
I see. So they're so well run that the criminals were attracted to Minnesota. And it's not all Somalis. It's literally hundreds of Somalis, except for the 8 who are non-Somali. So don't generalize, Mark. He, too, has gotten the research paper on don't alienate the Somalis. They're still voting for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's very reminiscent of how he handled controversies during his vice presidential campaign, which is he's got some stuff to say, and he hopes the parade moves on before anybody asks a follow-up question. I did a little checking during the break. Minnesota used to have 2-year terms for governor. They don't anymore. 4-year terms, no term limits, but no one's ever won a third term. No one has ever successfully been a third-term 4-year governor, and I think he might not break the streak after that answer. If
they vote for him, they deserve what they're getting at this point. But so here was a little war of words between Trump and President Trump and Governor Walz. Which is the opening shot? It's actually the opening shot was in a Truth Social in which President Trump called Tim Walz retarded. He used the word, quote, retarded. And then Tim Walz responded to that again on Meet the Press. I think it's SOT 20.
Look, Donald Trump insulting me is a badge of honor for me, but I think we all know, both as an educator for a couple decades and as a parent, using that term is just so damaging. It's hurtful.
Is it?
This is cruelness. This is meanness. It's aimed at a broader community. And as far as demonizing our Somali community, maybe he could help us on some things. Demonizing an entire community, folks who are in the professions, educators, artists, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, they bring the diversity and the energy to a place like Minnesota. And for him to just randomly decide to do this, it makes no sense. Do your job. Get the criminals out. Secure our border, but do it with dignity and respect to the American tradition of respecting immigrants and refugees as a beacon of hope.
Okay, Trump shutting down immigration from third world countries was not done randomly. It was done in the wake of this reporting and the shooting of these 2 National Guardsmen by an Afghani national over the weekend. It wasn't random, but let me just give you the last piece of the story, which is Trump then responding to that chastising from Tim Walz on Air Force One Sunday night, SOT 2.
You called him what many Americans do find inoffensive or retarded. Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with him. Absolutely, sure.
Because you don't think
you have a problem with him? You know what? I think there's something wrong with him. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into his state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. Yeah, there's something wrong with Walz.
Okay, so Trump's defense is he actually is slow. He's not even taking on the issue that term is offensive to some. He's like, but it's real. I'm telling you, he's slow. Which is
anyone who
classic Trump.
I was going to say anyone who spent any time with Donald Trump is zero surprised at that response.
He's not sorry, no. Mark. You're shocked?
No. He's not even sorry, not sorry. He's just not sorry.
Oh no, not sorry. And I have to say, I've been thinking about that word because a lot of people are starting to use that word again. I don't mean to be too philosophical about it, but I do think it's one of those, like, it's a message word. It's not really like anybody wants to make fun of people who are slow when it comes to brain development. It's that they're sick and tired of being told what they can and cannot say. That term was used for decades, without it. No one's trying to actually say something negative about that community. They're trying to say something about the person they're targeting, that they're kind of slow. And this is a way of saying we're done being word policed. I think that's why Trump says it too.
Yeah, and also it's a word that he grew up using, I'm sure, because when he was a kid, that was a word people used. So, again, I'm not surprised by it. I'm always against word policing, just as a general matter. So,
yeah, and it never works with Donald Trump. Yeah. I can speak to that firsthand. Yeah. Just don't go there. He's not going to be moved by you.
No matter how good your research is.
One of the things we love about
No matter how good your research is, no matter how high profile the debate moment, he will not be moved by the word police.
That's right. But this wound up being a great strength of his as things turned out. Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
You mentioned Stephen Miller, and he's kind of in the news today because of his wife, Katie Miller, who went on CNN and had a very interesting exchange with Abby Phillip, who tries to act like she's just totally benign, just totally neutral. It's just the facts that make her always come down on the side of the Democrats. It's not her bias. It's just the facts. She can't be in charge of the fact that all the facts run in favor of Democrats. That's just how it goes. So they had an exchange on her show, and I'll just let it play out. You'll get it. This is Friday night, SOT 26.
Wait, you have Jennifer Welch on your show very often, and you've never pushed back as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no
Katie.
different than Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson's show. It's not, and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. Wait, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes sits around and says that he likes Hitler. How is that similar
Katie have to do with it? What does she have to do with it?
Hold on.
She has nothing to do with it. Literally nothing.
Scott, Katie is the person who just said to me that it is comparable to say that Nick Fuentes, who is literally a neo-Nazi, is the same as somebody, a liberal, who has an opinion, who is not a neo-Nazi. They are not
a hateful opinion.
The same.
How do you want? Excuse me. Let's go back to the point one more time.
But
Nick
Katie,
Fuentes can espouse an opinion on Tucker Carlson's show.
It is not the same.
And he didn't push back the same way you didn't push back when someone called someone in my family.
Hold on a second.
It's not different.
Hold on a second. If someone comes on this show and says, I love Hitler and I admire what he did, they would never, first of all, I would never invite them on the show and they would never be invited back. So those two things are not the same.
But yet you've gone on Jennifer Welch's podcast. It's the same thing.
Okay, so Jennifer Welch came up. I think I said that's Stephen Miller's wife, Katie Miller, but also she was on Doge. She's an independent professional in her own right and a podcast host. That Jennifer Welch, who I'm just now getting to see in these podcast clips, who is possibly the most hateful person in the national dialogue today. It's like tough to say, but even Joy Reid is more joyful than this woman. She's truly deeply, deeply hateful of everybody on Team Red. here's just a sampling of this person who Abby Phillip is totally fine with, has on her show repeatedly, went on this woman's show herself, Abby Phillip did. Not hateful. See, Stephen Miller, hateful. Jennifer Welsh, not hateful. That's Abby Phillip's world. Here, watch.
Shockingly, the conservatives that I thought were just crusty old white people have morphed into this young group of misogynists. And I can tell you, when I'm around white people, they test the racist water. They test it on people like you all. Stephen Miller is a Nazi and he is a sociopath. He is a little insecure white supremacist. This guy was bullied in high school, and he's unattractive, and he's 4'10", and nobody fucking likes him. You get to J.D. Vance, who is a failed drag queen, because little Moses Mike Grinder Johnson worships two things: Donald Trump and his closeted life. For this dementia-ridden, diaper-wearing sack of shit, he started off his 60 Minutes interview by saying, "I am not a Nazi." Okay? He clearly is a Nazi. People that triple Trump should be banned, boycotted from enjoying the best thing that America has to offer, which is multiculturalism. Get your fat asses out of the Mexican restaurant. Get your fat asses over to Cracker Barrel, because nobody wants to see your fucking smug ass, teeny weeny, pink arm, big gut around. Nobody wants to see that shit. No one.
You got it? Not hateful. It's fine. Abby Phillip that's just a liberal with an opinion. That's how she described her. Stephen Miller, with his immigration crackdown, supported by the vast majority of Americans, hateful. Clearly, Abby Phillip has no problem with him being called a white supremacist or a Nazi, because she was actually on Jennifer Welch's show when Jennifer said that directly to Abby Phillip. Fine. Your thoughts?
I just think the left has to play by the same rules as they want the right to play by, and if they want to be the police of who can speak on the National Town Square, then they need to recognize that they've got policing to do in their backyard as well. And right now, that's just not how they feel, and they should, because they should either let everybody speak or they should police their own side.
But here's what's happening there. I mean, you're being polite, but Abby Phillip finds absolutely nothing wrong with what that woman said. I guarantee you she agrees with all of it. Yeah. She's a fan of this Welsh person. And so she wants her to come on her show, I think 4 times we counted. She said yes to going on this person's show. Then this woman, do we have the soundbite, you guys? I don't know where we are, but like in the SOT lineup. But she went on her show, and the woman said it directly to her. Here's that. Listen to this. There was no pushback. Here's what Abby Phillip tried to just sort of say. Oh, gee, I don't know what's in his head. Gee, could be white supremacist. Who can know? Watch.
Stephen Miller is a white supremacist. I mean, he is, and he's basically running the White House. They keep Trump busy with his decorating projects. He's got building the arch now. He's got his Oval Office design. And then you have these real sociopaths that are real anti-Semites, true white supremacists like Stephen Miller. And even though he's Jewish, he's like a Nazi Jew.
Well, look, I can't speak to what Stephen Miller's motivations are.
You're such an asshole. I'm sorry, but Abby Phillip is a fucking asshole. She let her call him a Nazi Jew and just said, I'm sorry, but I can't speak to what his motivations are. What a cowardly dodge, just to try to maintain some semblance of objectivity. The only proper response to that is, come on, hold it. We can criticize his immigration policy all day long if you want. Don't call him a Nazi Jew. That's disgusting.
Well, she calls balls and strikes. She's never seen a Democrat throw anything but a strike.
She's going to have her glasses readjusted really soon. But this is the mainstream of CNN, Mark. Yeah. This is the reinvented, more mainstream, moderate CNN. That's truly one of the faces of it.
If Paramount buys them and Ellison, enacts his vision, I'd be surprised if she's still in that job.
Good. Get her, Ellison. Go, Barry. You can do some crossover programming. They're going to need your help. Get her. Get rid of her. And by the way, she will fail in the independent lane because she has no personality. She has a lot of bias and no personality. It's a bad combo, actually, but perfect.
She's making
for CNN.
She's making our friend Scott Jennings rich.
Well, that's good. We're in favor of that. But he can go on some other loser show at CNN for that when she gets fired. Something else happened on regular TV, CNN, with Abby Phillip that actually is kind of interesting. And that is the son of Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas went on. And reportedly, as Maureen would say, reportedly, allegedly, did not do that well, to the point where, hold on, I'm just going to give you the headline before we play it. The parents are said to be so furious with CNN that they intend to blacklist the entire network moving forward. Now you're having Scott Jennings weigh in on this and others as well. This is from a debate that happened on November 10th, but is only now causing
Can I ask you a question
the response?
before
Yeah,
you
you
play?
can.
Because I skimmed the New York Post story. What does their son do for a living? Like, why was he on CNN?
It's funny you should ask. He is host of SiriusXM's Young Americans with Dylan Douglas and a 2022 graduate of Brown University, which is pretty much all we need
Was
to know
going to
about
guess
him.
Wesleyan, but okay.
His Gen Z political show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. Must have missed it. What were you going to say,
I said
Mark?
I would have guessed Wesleyan, but Brown's okay.
Brown. I mean, it literally, there's no school in the nation to which I would less want to, I would, there's no school worse than Brown when it comes to Woketopia. They're number one. They're worse than Columbia. They're number one.
Oberlin is number one.
No, what's worse about Oberlin? I know they're terrible. They
you know the story?
They've been ensconced in scandal. But truly, like, I think Brown is an outpost for Hamas. I think that's almost literally true. Almost. But they're so bad.
Oberlin's bad. Oberlin's really bad.
Come on.
Yeah.
Oberlin is not, like, if you...
Let's go undercover.
People say, like...
Let's go undercover. Could we post... Do you think we could both pass for college students? Let's go undercover.
Here's what I'd like to do. Go undercover as a Jewish American and go to Brown University. And, like, if I were a man, I'd wear the yarmulke. I'd do, like, something to make it obvious, because they are breeding anti-Semites, in my opinion, at Brown University. It's disgusting. It's worse than any place.
All right, let's do this. Let's get a makeup artist who can turn you into an Orthodox Jewish man, and I'll get a camera.
I think we just have to take off the makeup and then wear, like, the right hair.
Let's go to Brown, and we'll go to the Hillel, and then you'll walk out, and we'll just shoot the whole thing and see what happens.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll be lucky if I make it across campus, because that university is disgusting. In any event, back to Mr. Douglas, Dylan, that is, who's the dual Nepo baby. And this is what, look at this. This is reportedly what has his parents so irate over his, quote, humiliation, allegedly at the hands of CNN, that they're going to boycott the network. Here.
Like, you cannot put on the American people that Democrats were the one that were hurting people, making this plight.
Who was casting the votes against opening the government? Democrats or Republicans?
Who was casting
the votes?
Scott, who was wanting to cut SNAP benefits?
Nobody.
Republicans who was playing up SNAP benefits after two courts ruled that it was unallowed.
Republicans voted to fund SNAP 15 times. Democrats voted to defund it 15 times.
You talk about the Affordable Health Care Act. Okay,
it's terrible.
Landmark legislation is not perfect. We understand that Democrats, Republicans, Independents, 70% of Americans, not Democrats, not just Independents, 70% of Americans believe that they should increase those subsidies past the dead mark of December, the COVID era subsidy benefits. So it's a huge, huge thing that Democrats, Republicans, 70% agree with. And look, when it comes to the government shutdown, I was of the persuasion that to go for it, I didn't really get it. Democrats wanted a fight. They got a fight. Chuck Schumer, back in last year, didn't fight. He got a lot of flack for it, particularly in his home state of New York. So they wanted a fight, but they found a fight that was worth fighting with talking about the Affordable Health Care Act. People were with them. Democrats were leading in the polls. We won big on Tuesday.
That's what it was for, right? It was for the election, right?
Well, I think we should have kept going. What I don't understand, and which I would love others to help me out understand, I don't understand why we caved so soon when the American people seemed to be on our side.
Because the election ended. You just said it. It was for the election.
Listen,
the election ended. Then you caved.
That's it?
Seemed like normal, like whatever. I'm booking him on Next Up, by the way. right now.
Are you?
Now.
You should.
Right
Will
now.
you do it?
I'm trying right now as we speak. I'm using my hand off camera to text the booker and say, I want that kid.
I actually would listen to that.
Yeah.
Let's see if he does any better with you. He didn't do well. I mean, that's clear. He wasn't substantive and he didn't have his talking points lined up, never mind actual substance. But did anyone expect any different? Like, why did they think their 22-year-old son would go on to CNN across from the Scott Jennings of the world and do well? Why did they think that?
I mean, I don't know. For a liberal in a CNN pundit slot, I didn't think he was so bad. I mean, it wasn't great, but I didn't feel like he was.
I mean, with those qualifiers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
I could
honestly,
name names. I could name names, but I mean, I thought, whatever, like grading on the normal curve. I don't know. If I were his parents, maybe they didn't like the part in his hair. I would redo the hair.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
That tweet that Trump sent out, or Truth Social, in the wake of this tragedy, these 2 poor young National Guardsmen, 120, 124, the 20-year-old now dead, the 24-year-old still fighting for his life. I don't know. It doesn't sound good, Mark. No. The perpetrator shot and expected to make it, shot by a 3rd National Guardsman. But now Trump sends out this Truth Social, which is just, it is a barn burner. And I have to say, it may be, in the view of many Americans, the best thing he's done since becoming president for the 2nd time. I'm going to read just a couple highlights, very long, but here are the highlights. He's talking about how he's going to get rid of these migrants and asylum seekers. And he says, a migrant earning 30 grand with a green card will get roughly 50 grand in yearly benefits for their family. As an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey, as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope that they will be left alone. The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing. And on we go. Then he says, I will permanently pause migration from all 3rd world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by Sleepy Joe Biden's auto pen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the U.S. or who's incapable of loving our country. I will end all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization. I don't know whether any of that or all of it is true, but I think most Republicans would say, shoot it into my veins. That's exactly what I voted for.
Yeah, and not just only Republicans, some independents, some Democrats. That's been Donald Trump's core message for a while, and very informed by the experience with Europe. Europe is dealing with all of these problems, in some ways more severe than what the United States has dealt with. Whatever laws might be broken by what the president's suggesting, whatever traditions, whatever norms, whatever downsides there are, the coalition that elected him president 2 out of 3 times is well on board with that philosophy about what America needs to do to be safe and prosperous. So there are tens of millions who don't like what the president wrote, but there are tens of millions who do. And again, no one should be surprised that that's his reaction to what occurred.
And we talked about the Gallup poll earlier, which had an overall not great approval number for Trump. But one of the areas in which he's still very much holding on is immigration. So you tell me whether this retort to that Truth Social by Mark Kelly, who's one of the so-called seditious six in connection with that Pete Hegseth story we covered earlier, but also has decided to weigh in on this whole thing with the National Guardsmen as well. Tell me whether this is effective, given those poll numbers. SOT 9.
This is kind of more of the same from this president. When he says things like third world countries, what is he really saying? I think what he's saying is he doesn't want brown people in our country.
Mark?
I mean, if he wants to get the squad's endorsement for president, it could be effective.
Is that what that is?
I mean, it's more than that. It's the belief of the Democratic Party about Donald Trump. They believe he's motivated by racism. It's what they think about Stephen Miller, too. They think they're bigots who want America to be an all-white country when that's not what they want. But that's Mark Kelly is enunciating the view of Blue America about President Trump's view on immigration.
This is just like, I mean, honestly, it's so tired. It's so worn. It doesn't work. It's like, okay, you can keep trying to, use those plays out of that old playbook, but you use them to try to get a woman elected president, and it failed. What would make you think it's going to work better now on an issue that Trump, notwithstanding his overall sagging numbers, still has huge support on? So, okay, I guess that's what they're going to do. There's more of that coming, you'll be shocked, from Jasmine Crockett on MS Now. Here's SOT 10.
And the idea that one person can get out of line and commit such a horrific crime as shooting two National Guardsmen that never, ever asked to be here. In fact, we know the young lady that lost her life, specifically, we're saying that this is a waste of time, but now you want to go against every single immigrant. That doesn't make sense. And it's frankly not who we are, because if that's the case, let's talk about the white supremacists and how many of them need to be kicked out of this country, because I can guarantee you I can track down more crimes that they've committed, because overall immigrants have a lower crime committal rate than white supremacists. But we don't want to talk about that in this country.
Overall, I love that. Overall, yes, because there are indeed still more Americans in America than there are immigrants, madam. But once again, playing the race card there, and a bunch of disinformation as she does it. Trump prioritizing deporting migrants instead of white supremacists. Your thoughts on her?
Well, I have to confess, in the last 3 weeks, Representative Crockett has become a guilty pleasure for me. I love watching her on TV and watching how her mind works as it connects to her mouth. I really do. It's just something mesmerizing about how she takes questions and spins them back with it's not word salad, it's like word pad thai. There's a lot of complexities. There's different flavors, textures, all in there. So it's hard for me to analyze what she says, because I watch her like this. For those listening on the podcast version, I dropped my mouth in slack-jawed disbelief. I mean, it's incredible the things she says, and she's still thinking of running for statewide office, which I would look forward to.
And by the way, that reference she made to the National Guards woman who was killed, thinking it was pointless or a waste of time to be doing this in D.C. is way, way out of context, and shame on her for doing that to a newly fallen soldier. What the woman said, Sarah, was that it's pointless if they're not going to let us actually do law enforcement. She wanted to have the reins taken off of her and the other National Guardsmen. She wanted to do more law enforcement. She was upset over, these constant crackdowns on them, not to be able to do anything to actually help the city of D.C. So that's a Democrat problem, Jasmine Crockett. That's not a complaint that she was there in the first place. It was a request for people like you to try to take the reins off so that the National Guard can do what they're capable of doing. But who would expect media honesty from her? Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious, too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips, too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.